Chapter 741. At the entrance of the sect of all times stood a young man and woman. The man wore a blue robe, looking valiant and extraordinary. The woman wore a white dress, looking like a national beauty. Both of them were around 20 years old. Although they had smiles on their faces, they emitted a cold aura that made one feel as if they were proud plum blossoms in the snow. "You too," Li Qingyang said, "please wait a moment. Our patriarch will be here soon." The cold aura emitted by the two didn't cause him any discomfort. He wasn't trying to resist it, but the elder senior sister's cold aura was much stronger than theirs. He had long since become accustomed to it. "Do you want to wait outside?" The woman smiled. Although her smile was sweet, there was a trace of dissatisfaction in her tone. Li Qingyang knew that they came from a top sect, so they definitely had complaints about being left at the entrance. Thus, he apologetically said, "This is a rule of my sect of all times. Please forgive us." The patriarch didn't invite them in, so they could only wait outside. However, the second disciple was quite steady in dealing with people. If he were to drive, the steering wheel would never fly off. Tsk tisk. The man's eyebrows raised in displeasure. Truly worthy of being the sect that won the dragon-tiger struggle for hegemony. You really do have style and arrogance. Li Qingyang smiled, not saying anything. They didn't have any interactions with this top sect, so why would they suddenly come to visit? Moreover, from the arrogance that these two people inadvertently revealed, it seemed that they didn't come with good intentions. Xiao at this time, Jun Changshao flew up from the foot of the mountain, his expression crumbling. The man and woman looked up, their eyes flashing with surprise. They instantly recognized that this was the patriarch of the sect of all times that had frequently appeared in the projection array formation. They also judged that he didn't rely on his flying ability to fly up, but rather that he was thrown up. What was this? Patriarch. Li Qingyang's complexion changed. Shua. Shua. Xiao Maxian flew up from the foot of the mountain, catching up to the constantly ascending Jun Changshao. Then, she grabbed onto his shoulder and suddenly fell down, finally stopping in front of the mountain entrance with a loud bang. The landing was smooth and steady, and unusually dashing. "Master." Xiao Maxian brightly smiled. "Is it convenient?" Jun Changshao's feet landed on the ground, and he could feel the incomparably heavy weight of the ground. The corner of his mouth twitched as he said, "Don't play next time, my heart can't take it." Noticing that the man and woman were looking at him, he hurriedly straightened his collar and said seriously, "What can I do for the two of you?" Jun Patriarch. The man cupped his hands and said, "My junior sister and I have come here to meet Lu Qianqian." "You want to see my eldest disciple?" Jun Changshao was rather surprised. The woman smiled and said, "Jun Patriarch probably doesn't know this, but Lu Qianqian used to be from the same sect as us. Later, she made a mistake and was expelled." Li Qingyang's eyes widened. Eldest senior sister was once a disciple of Taixien Xingzong. This was big news. Really? Jun Changshao was also surprised. However, he wasn't as shocked as Li Qingyang. After all, he had guessed that his eldest disciple must have some unspeakable secret behind her back. Jun Changshao looked at the woman and lightly said, "Are you happy that she was expelled? Since they used to be from the same sect, they should have some feelings for each other." As he spoke, his face was full of smiles, as if he were exposing someone's past and exposing their scars. It had nothing to do with protecting her. Jun Changshao simply hated this sort of person. Jun Patriarch. The man said, "Can we go in and talk?" "No." Jun Changshao said, "My sect of all times does not welcome the two of you. Please return the way you came." This fellow's arrogance and the woman's gloating attitude towards his eldest disciple left him in a bad mood. Thus, he didn't hesitate to ask them to leave. The man frowned and said, "Jun Patriarch, even if we went to other first-rate sects to visit, they would at least be very welcoming. Now that we're here to visit your sect, isn't it a bit impolite to not let us in? Jun Changshao waved his hand with a smile and said, the two of you, my sect of all times can't accommodate the two of you. Please leave gracefully and be careful on the road. Very warm and courteous. However, the man and woman's faces were full of displeasure. What? Jun Changshao suddenly became arrogant and said, this is my territory. Don't tell me I don't have the right to not let you in. The man said with a cold face, since Jun Patriarch doesn't welcome us, then we'll take our leave. Jun Changshao said, forgive me for not sending you off. It wasn't that he deliberately pretended to be cool and forced a conflict. He just couldn't stand these two people. Moreover, since Lu Qianqian was expelled by the Taixuan Xingzong, they definitely didn't have good intentions. In order to protect the disciple, it was reasonable to not let them in. Wait a moment. At this time, a cold voice sounded out from the door. Lu Qianqian walked out, her white clothes whiter than snow. There was a complex look in her clear eyes. She had already noticed that these two people had come to visit her at the sect, but she had pretended not to see them. Senior apprentice Sister Lu. The man said. The woman smiled and said, she's already been expelled, so how could she be our senior apprentice sister? Jun Changshao frowned. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have a cultivation base, he would have directly used his energy domain and let this woman experience the true meaning of fear. Feeling the rising anger in her master's heart, Xiao Maxian whispered, can I help? No need. Jun Changshao shook his head. That's true. The man smiled and said, she is now a disciple of the sect of all times. She is not related to us in any way, so how could she be worthy of being called senior apprentice sister? Lu Qianqian lightly said, you came to find me just to ridicule me? Of course not. The woman smiled and said, senior apprentice sister Fang told us that if we passed by the sect of all times, we should visit you on her behalf. Hearing the words senior apprentice sister Fang, Lu Qianqian's eyes flashed with a cold light, but she quickly concealed it. She said, go back and tell her that I'm doing well and that she doesn't need to worry about me. The woman smiled and said, I also believe that in this place where the spiritual energy is so thin, you must be doing much better than senior apprentice sister Fang of Sky Ice Heart Palace. Oh, that's right. She paused and said, senior apprentice sister Fang has already been nominated as a Taixuan Xingzong elder. If she hadn't been expelled, this position should have been yours. I don't care. Lu Qianqian said. The woman's eyes flashed with disgust. You're still so cold even after so many years. I wonder how the disciples of the sect of all times endure it. Senior apprentice sister. The man said, senior apprentice sister Fang has already passed on her message. Let's go. Jun Patriarch. He cupped his hands together and said, farewell. Xiao Maxian. Jun Changshao said, send them off for me. Yes. Xiao Maxian jumped over. Two bursts of energy erupted from her hands, instantly binding the two Taixuan Xingzong disciples. Then, she flew to the highest point and ruthlessly threw them down the mountain. Hoo-hoo, the man and woman plummeted down like cannonballs, their expressions marvelous beyond compare. Shua! Shua! Just as they were about to touch the ground, Xiao Maxian had already taken a step forward. Her two small hands gently caught them and she brightly smiled, is this convenient? Puff! The man and woman stood where they were and began to vomit. Their legs began to shake uncontrollably. Finally, they were unable to stand firm and sat down on the ground. The superiority, temperament, and pride that came from a large sect had long since disappeared along with their fall. Chapter 742. Senior Apprentice Sister Lu, you're so amazing. Senior Apprentice Sister Lu, this junior apprentice sister doesn't know much about cultivation. Can you teach me? Senior Apprentice Sister Lu, with your growth speed, you'll definitely become a sect elder in the future. Senior Apprentice Sister Lu, on the peak of the back mountain, Lu Qianqian stood proudly. The words of her fellow disciples who had been pestering her in the profound sacred sect echoed in her ears. Frost gradually condensed on her jade-like face. The woman that Xiao Maxian sent away was one of her fellow disciples who had once asked her about martial arts. To be exact, she was one of her former admirers. Unfortunately, he had violated the rules of the sect and was expelled from the sect. The fellow disciples who had once surrounded him seemed to have changed their faces and hearts. Phew! Lu Qianqian gently exhaled. She waved her sleeves and was about to leave when she saw Jun Changshao sitting on a rock beside her. Gotcha! She took a bite of the apple and chewed. If you have any troubles, you can find someone to talk to. Perhaps you'll feel better this way. This disciple has no troubles. Lu Qianqian turned and left. When she brushed past Jun Changshao, she heard him say, "Why were you expelled?" "I made a mistake." "What mistake did you make?" "I made a mistake that I shouldn't have." Jun Chang smiled and said, "I once asked you about your past, and your answer was that knowing too much about some things isn't necessarily a good thing. Instead, it's a disaster." Lu Qianqian was silent. Because she had said it before. Jun Changshao took another bite of the apple and said, "It doesn't seem so scary now." "Patriarch, don't doubt the strength of a first-rate sect just because you won the Dragon-Tiger battle," Lu Qianqian said. "In terms of overall strength, our sect of all times is far from these top sections. But in terms of disciples, we can still compete," Jun Changshao said. "Besides, you've been expelled, so you have nothing to do with the Taishian Xingzong anymore. Do you think they'll deliberately cause trouble for you?" Lu Qianqian said, "As long as someone still hates me, there will be trouble." "Are you referring to senior apprentice Sister Fang?" Jun Changshao asked. Lu Qianqian didn't explain. Jun Changshao said, "The two Taishian Xingzong disciples just now were a bit annoying. I've already ordered Xiaomu and the others to secretly follow them and find a chance to beat them up." Lu Qianqian. She wasn't surprised. "Where you don't care." Lu Qianqian's words is. "I Qianqian Xingzongs, I'll go back first." Lu Qianqian was about to leave when she heard Jun Changshao say, "Don't be like Xingchen. Think of leaving the sect and running away after being discovered. Even if the sky falls, there's still the 187 m tall patriarch to hold it up. Is the extra 7 centimeters because of your high heels?" The system complained. "Scram. I understand." Lu Qianqian left. Jun Changshao sat for a while, threw away the apple core, and went to the drizzle hall. As soon as he walked in, Li Luoqiu said before he could speak, "I've already ordered the members to gather information on the Taishian Xingzong as soon as possible, as well as the senior apprentice Sister Fang that woman mentioned." "You understand me," Jun Changshao said. Li Luoqiu said, "I also understand that the patriarch's concern for the eldest disciple is far greater than the other disciples." "Is that so?" Jun Changshao scratched his head and said, "I've always been fair and just to my disciples. I won't show any favoritism." Creak. The prison cell opened, and Jun Changshao walked in and said, "Have you thought about it?" The Purple King, who was lying on the ground, gritted its teeth and said, "Despicable human, listen to me, the beast race will never." I know. Jun Changshao stopped it, and waved his hand. Ihei and Arai walked in with a sumptuous meal, and quickly filled the entire table. The Purple King, who was still very weak, smelled the fragrance, and immediately became spirited. It stood up with difficulty and sat down without hesitation. During this period, although it was bombarded every day, eating Lu Wancher's cooking made it fat. Jun Changshao poured wine for it and said, "Actually, as long as you pledge allegiance to me, I won't treat you badly. At least I'll provide food and shelter." The purple craggy monster monarch ignored him and continued eating. After finishing all the delicious food, it drank a mouthful of wine and said, "Come. Let's continue." "Take it away," Jun Changshao said. Boom, the sound of cannons came from the back of the mountain. Not long after, the Purple King was dragged back to the prison cell. Jun Changshao was not in a hurry. In his opinion, as long as this guy's stomach was captured by delicious food, even if the stone in the toilet was smelly and hard, it could be subdued. Patriarch, we're back. The next day, Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, and the others returned to the sect with smiles on their faces. They quietly followed behind the man and woman. When they left southwest Yangzhou and entered a deep mountain forest, they deliberately attracted a large number of ferocious beasts. Although the move was a bit old-fashioned, the effect was not bad. Although the two Taishian Xingzong disciples were strong, they were besieged by countless ferocious beasts and paid a great price to barely break out of the encirclement. This time, they accidentally passed by the sect of all times on behalf of senior sister Fang and ridiculed Lu Qianqian. In the end, they returned to the sect with injuries all over their bodies, which was a relatively good ending. Hall Master Li was very efficient. In just a few days, she collected information on the Taishian Xingzong. Patriarch, she reported. The senior sister Fang that the woman mentioned should be Fang Lingyu, the most outstanding new disciple of the Taishian Xingzong. Does she have a grudge against Lu Qianqian? Jun Changshao asked. Li Luoqiu shook her head and said, I can't find out for now. Drizzle Hall could only obtain information on the sect, but it was only one-sided. As for the matters between the disciples, no one talked about it, so there was no way to find out. Pay more attention to this woman, Jun Changshao said. Yes. Huff huff, in the wing room of the inner court, the momentum of advancement increased. Nearly 100 disciples successfully broke through to the Martial King realm with the help of the Martial King pills. The sect of all times had more and more Martial King realm disciples now, but they were still a little lacking in martial emperors. I said 4. Jun Changshao broke down and said, can't you use more strength and break through to the martial emperor realm quickly? Patriarch, we're already using a lot of strength. Jiang Ye was speechless and said, but it's really difficult to break through to the martial emperor realm without a higher understanding of martial arts. He and the Ning brothers had reached the peak of the Martial King realm a long time ago, but after so long, there was still no sign of them breaking through to the Martial Emperor realm. Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed. Things like breaking through to the next realm could not be rushed. Forget it. Jun Changshao said, let's go and recuperate first. He chose a day and entered the space-time secret realm. But before he left, he specifically told Su Xiaoma not to give the Purple King any food and to starve it for a few days. Of course. The bombardment continued every day. With an extremely durable target, Xiao Ziji's proficiency in artillery kept increasing. He could even accurately fire while moving at high speed. No matter how much he was bombarded, the Purple King did not care. But what he could not tolerate was that his food was cut off. Grumble, grumble. In the dungeon, the Purple King's stomach failed to live up to his expectations and said weakly, I'm so hungry. His stomach had been nourished by Lu Wanshi. After not eating for 2 days, he became even weaker than when he was bombarded. Was he eating food or illegal poison? On the 4th day, the smell of food drifted in from the window. The Purple King struggled to stand up, but his hands weakly grabbed the cold iron window and said, This king wants to eat. This king wants to eat, eating is fine. Jun Changxiao's voice came, submit to me. The Purple King immediately understood that this guy was deliberately using food to force him to submit, so he angrily said, This king will never submit to a human even if I starve to death. Then continue to starve, Jun Changxiao said. And so, the Purple King was starved for another 3 days. The most unlucky one was Xiao Daodu, because he was also starving. During this period, he could only use water to satisfy his hunger. Big brother. You want to torture this spirit beast, why did you bring me along? Creak. The next day, the door opened and the long-awaited sunlight shone in. Su Xiaoma walked in and placed a bowl of fried rice on the table. He waved at Zhao Daodu and said, "Come and eat." Schwa. When Zhao Daodu, who was originally exhausted, heard the word, eat, he immediately stood up and rushed to the table. He didn't even take his chopsticks and directly grabbed the rice with his hands to eat. The Purple King also wanted to go over, but was stopped by Su Xiaoma and said, "You don't have a share." Munch munch. Zhao Daodu, who had been starving for several days, wolfed down the bowl of fried rice. He ate until tears almost flowed out. Gulp. The Purple King swallowed his saliva. Although he tried hard to turn his head and not look at that guy eating, his eyeballs were honestly moving in the opposite direction. So satisfying. After eating the fried rice, Zhao Daodu touched his stomach and lay on the wooden board. He felt that his life had reached the peak. Damn it, the Purple King waited for Su Xiaoma to leave and walked to the table with difficulty. When he saw that there wasn't even a grain of rice in the bowl, his eyes turned red with anger. Next, the disciples of the Sect of all times would give Zhao Daodu a bowl of fried rice as promised. He was craving for it. Endure. This king will endure. What a delicacy. One day, when Zhao Daodu lay down after eating the fried rice, the Purple King walked over again. When he saw that there was still a grain of rice left in the bowl, his eyes lit up. He tried hard to pick up the bowl and leaned his head over. At this moment, a voice sounded in his left ear, "You are the Purple King. You are the king of the beast race. Why would you bend over a grain of rice? Listen to me and break the bowl." Yes. This king is the king of the beast race. I must persevere. Just as the Purple King was about to raise the bowl, a voice sounded in his right ear, "Humans have a saying. A great man can stretch and bend. Now that you are in a desperate situation, you must think of a way to survive to have a chance to see the light of day again. Break it. Eat it." The two voices quarreled in his ear. The Purple King's expression was hideous as he was caught in a dilemma. In the end, he shook his head to make the two voices disappear completely. Then, he stuck out his tongue and touched the grain of rice on the side of the bowl. He stuck it and retracted it. Although it was only one grain of rice. But with the combination of ingredients, it emitted the most stimulating taste. Boom! The Purple King was struck by lightning again. His burnt hair stood on end again. His soul ran under the setting sun again, chasing after the youth and childhood that had passed away. Too delicious, too delicious. The Purple King put down the bowl and pressed his hands on the table. He tried hard to support his weak body. Bean-sized tears dripped down. Smack! A bowl of piping hot fried rice appeared in his field of vision. Jun Changshao stood at the side and pushed forward with his hand, saying, "I have changed my mind. I don't want you to submit. I only want you to enter the Sect of all times." Enter the Sect of all times? The Purple King tried hard to raise his head. His eyes flashed with anger, saying, "What's the difference between this and submitting?" "There's a difference." Jun Changshao said, "If you submit, you'll be a servant. If you enter the sect, you'll be a disciple. The beast race will never be slaves." The Purple King said. Jun Changshao pushed the fried rice forward again, saying, "I will provide food and accommodation." "You're insulting a beast race king." The Purple King said angrily. Jun Changshao said, "The fried rice is in front of you now. If you agree, eat it. If you don't, I'll knock it over. The decision is yours." The Purple King lowered his head and looked at the bowl of piping hot fried rice. He made a difficult decision in his heart. Jun Patriarch. Zhao Daodu said weakly, "He won't eat it." "I'll eat it." "Then eat it," Jun Changshao said. Zhao Daodu hurried over and was about to take the bowl of fried rice with a grin. The Purple King suddenly turned his head and said with a sharp gaze, "Scram." Smack! He sat down and picked up his chopsticks. He looked at Jun Changshao and said, "Let's make a deal. I'll only be a disciple, not a slave." "I'll provide food and accommodation," Jun Changshao said. The Purple King couldn't hold back anymore and started eating in big mouthfuls. When the fried rice grains rolled in his mouth, the impact of the delicious food made him feel like he was running into the depths of the universe to chase after the dignity that was gradually fading away. Smack! Jun Changshao took out the entry form and wrote, "The Purple King obviously can't be used as a name. Let's use Zisu instead." The Purple King ignored him and continued eating his fried rice. After a while, he finished it clean and said, "Another bowl." Jun Changshao put the entry form in front of him and handed him some ink. "Put your fingerprint on your name. There's a big pot of fried rice in the kitchen. Eat as much as you want." Hearing that there was a big pot, the Purple King's eyes lit up. He didn't hesitate to put his fingerprint on the name Zisu. Ding! Sect member, 200-0150000. Jun Changshao took back the entry form and said to himself, "Finally, I've taken this guy down. Xiao Mu. Hurry up and untie your junior brother's leg chains." "Yes." Ka ka ka. The chains that bound the Purple King's legs were untied. It staggered out of the cell. Because it was noon and the sun was a little hot, it couldn't get used to it and reached out to block the sun. Damn human. This king will first pretend to be a snake. Wait until my body recovers, wait until I regain my strength, then I'll trample you and your sect's disciples under my feet. Smack. Suddenly, a pair of underwear flew over and hit the Purple King's face. Jun Changshao said, "Toothpick, don't keep it exposed outside." This was a pair of indestructible underwear from Supreme Goods. Not only was it triangular, but it was also red. It should be the same as Superman's. Smack smack smack. The Purple King sat in the cafeteria and ate fried rice in big mouthfuls. Because it was already wearing sexy underwear, readers can remove the mosaics themselves. 1 Black and 2 Black kept putting all kinds of delicacies on the table. After Lu Wancher was done, she sat beside it and smiled. "Senior sister's cooking is delicious, right?" Purple Craggy Monster Monarch stopped and asked, "You made this?" "Yes." Lu Wancher said, "Since you've become a sect's disciple, I'll be in charge of your food in the future." The Purple King didn't say anything else and ate all kinds of delicacies. Its soul kept running under the setting sun, but the dignity of the beast race's king was chasing it further and further away. Chapter 743. Beasts will never be slaves. Sorry, I'm only a disciple, not a slave. Even if I starve to death, I won't eat. I'm sorry, but this king is enduring humiliation for the sake of the imperial dynasty. Just like that, the Purple King, who couldn't resist the temptation of delicious food, compromised and became a disciple of the sect of all times. Are you new? I'm in charge of closing the door, you're in charge of opening the door. In front of the door, the Purple King and He Woody stood opposite each other. They were like two door gods. Jun Changshao was still a little worried. He was afraid that the Purple King wasn't sincere and would leave after his injuries were healed. Such a person who could take a beating and control beasts, he couldn't let him leave. "Little girl." Jun Changshao reminded her, "I'll leave this guy to you. Make good food for him every day so that he won't be able to free himself." The only thing he could do now was to use delicious food to tempt him. Lu Wancher nodded. In this aspect, she was very confident. Right. After returning to the main hall, Jun Changshao muttered, "This little girl cooks for the sect every day. She should have a lot of merit points, right?" He opened the system panel and clicked on the Lingyan Pavilion. He found Lu Wancher's name and matched it. The merit points that appeared was 100, and the confirm button appeared. As expected. Jun Changshao said in surprise, the little girl has also worked hard and made great contributions. Of course. She was the one who prepared the sect's 3 meals a day. Although this little girl's martial arts aren't outstanding, she contributed a lot to the sect. She has to have one of these 24 spots. Jun Changshao clicked on confirm, and a bunch of options appeared. Lu Wancher was already very busy managing so many people's meals every day. Thus, after thinking about it, he chose the skip button at the end. The host still has some conscience, the system said. Jun Changshao ignored it and thought to himself, when Xiao Ziji meets the conditions, I'll give him the right to operate the foundry pavilion. When Su Xiaoma meets the conditions, I'll give him the right to operate the charm pavilion. In order to be a handsome and elegant hands-off shopkeeper in the future, he had already made arrangements for his disciples in advance. After Jun Changshao made his choice, Lu Wancher, who was preparing ingredients in the kitchen, suddenly emitted a majestic aura. What's the situation? The little girl felt that her hands were a little warm. Thus, when he looked up, he saw white smoke rising from his hands, as if they were about to burst into flames. It's going to catch fire. Lu Wancher widened her eyes. Although she was surprised by the sudden situation, she did not panic. Although her hands were hot, she did not feel any pain. In fact, she felt a little comfortable. Huff huff, his palm, which was getting hotter and hotter, suddenly burst into flames. Patriarch, patriarch. Lu Wancher dragged her hands that were covered in flames and ran to the main hall. She exclaimed, my hands are on fire. Jun Changshao was very surprised. He, who had the body of holy flame, could feel that the flames on the little girl's hands were not condensed from the 5 elements heaven reflection art. The system said, this is the stove god flame. Stove god flame. Simply put, this flame is very rare. It is not weaker than some divine-grade fire seeds. However, its use is not for fighting, but for cooking. Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. Then it is useless. The system said, it is useless for someone like you who only knows how to cook instant noodles. However, for Lu Wancher, who is proficient in cooking, it is definitely a priceless treasure. That's true. Wow! At this moment, Lu Wancher screamed, Patriarch, look! There are words on the back of my hands. Jun Changshao hurriedly looked over and saw that the stove god flame was gradually weakening. The word, stove, appeared on the back of the little girl's hand, and then it slowly disappeared. He opened the purple smoke pavilion and saw that the paper with Lu Wancher's name had a picture of her cooking on it. At the same time, there was a large word, stove, on it. He understood, he understood. Any disciple who entered the Lingyan pavilion would have a word as a code name. The little girl was in charge of the cafeteria, so she was given the word, stove. Wait. At this moment, Jun Changshao was shocked to see that there was a small line of words under the picture. It said, merit points, 5001000. How could there be merit points? How did the limit increase from 100 to 1000? Jun Changshao hurriedly looked at Li Qingyang's picture and found that there were merit points under it, but it was only 501,000. The system said, it seems that disciples who enter the purple smoke pavilion have a chance to level up. Jun Changshao shook his head. Qingyang and Dudu should be able to get 1,000 points. As for Qianqian and Xingqian, they should be thanking the gods if they can get 100 points. Patriarch. Lu Wancher said excitedly, I have a new fire seed in my body. Jun Changshao said, that is the rare stove god flame. It will be very helpful for your cooking. Is that so? Although Lu Wancher didn't know about the stove god flame, she was happy that it was helpful for her cooking. I will try it. The little girl hurriedly returned to the kitchen and communicated with the fire seed in her body. Flames burst out from her palms and merged with the stove. At that moment, Lu Wancher felt the temperature of the pot and everything in it. I feel like I am the stove. Sizzle. Lu Wanshi poured oil and waited for the pot to heat up. Then, she picked up the kitchen knife with her left hand and threw in the green pepper and ginger slices. She was already very familiar with the stove god flame and could accurately grasp the best taste of the ingredients in the oil. So magical. Lu Wanshi was shocked. A moment later, a plate of shredded pork with green pepper was done. She hurriedly called Jun Changshao over and said, "Patriarch, try it. I can tell it's a delicacy just by smelling it." Jun Changshao picked up the chopsticks and took a bite. He stood there and felt as if his soul had flown into the sunset to chase his dreams. Ta! The Purple King took a step into the cafeteria. The tip of his nose sniffed the fragrant scent that swept over him, and he almost floated over with his feet off the ground. "Junior brother, come and try it too," Lu Wanshi said with a smile. The Purple King walked over, picked up the chopsticks and took a bite. Then, his purple hair stood on end and his soul flew into the sunset. As a result, in the cafeteria, Jun Changshao and the Purple King walked in circles around the dining table. They seemed to have fallen into an infinite fantasy. "You are the wind and I am the sand, entangling and lingering around the world." Lu Wanshi, who stayed in the Lingyan pavilion, was bestowed with the word stove. Although she didn't increase her realm or spirit root, she obtained the most powerful stove god flame. This flame provided the user with a strong sense of perception during the cooking process, allowing them to perfectly control the seasoning, food, and heat. Lu Wanshi was overjoyed. She was very confident about the god of cookery competition in the future. Of course, the benefits were not limited to the perfect quality of the dishes. It would also be of great help to her research on how to increase her strength in the future. The happiest people were the disciples of the sect of all times. Because every bowl of rice and every plate of dishes were delicacies that left an endless aftertaste. In the future, when it was time to eat, they would definitely see the Purple King anxiously waiting in the cafeteria. Without a doubt, this guy's stomach had already completely fallen. Jun Patriarch didn't have to worry. As long as Lu Wanshi was the hall master of the dining hall, the Purple King would be a disciple of the sect of all times. Chapter 744. With the help of the stove god fire, Lu Wanshi's culinary skills improved greatly. The ones who benefited the most were naturally the disciples of the sect of all times. Because they had delicious food every day, their cultivation was much better. Another example was the Purple King. After being bombarded for so long, he looked a little haggard. After eating Lu Wanshi's food for a few days, he suddenly became lively. It could even be described as a rebirth. "Girl." One day, the Purple King opened the door and slipped into the kitchen. "Can you give this king a special meal?" "Junior brother." Lu Wanshi held the spoon and said seriously, "How many times have I told you, don't call me king, call me." Okay, me. The Purple King smiled with a trembling face. Sigh. This demon who died before he even started his apprenticeship was completely convinced by Lu Wanshi's culinary skills. "What do you want to eat?" "I'll eat whatever you make. I'm not picky. Go to the cafeteria and wait." "Okay." The Purple King hurriedly sat in the cafeteria. When he thought about being able to eat delicious food again, his saliva flowed out. "The dishes are here." After a while, Lu Wanshi served two dishes. One was shredded potatoes, the other was stir-fried bean sprouts. The purple craggy monster monarch had a mental breakdown. Why are they all vegetarian? "Not eating." Lu Wanshi said, "Then I'll take it away." Don't. The Purple King hurriedly stopped her. He picked up the chopsticks and smiled, I'll eat. Although berserk beasts mainly ate meat, under the corrosion of Lu Wanshi's home-cooked food, they still showed exaggerated expressions. Too delicious. Hong. In the training room, Xiao Ziji punched the testing machine. Seeing the increase in strength, he said, "Junior sister, eating a mouthful of your strength fried rice has the same effect as eating a bowl." "That's great." Lu Wancher jumped up happily. After obtaining the stove god fire, the little girl took the time to study food. First, she improved the strength fried rice. In the past, it would only increase after eating an entire bowl of strength fried rice. Now, eating a mouthful gave her the same amount of strength. It was definitely a breakthrough. "Not bad, not bad." Jun Changshao said, "Continue to work hard and create more meals to make our fellow disciples stronger." "Yes." With the patriarch's praise and encouragement, Lu Wancher started to challenge a brand new and unknown field. Her next step was to research a defensive and speed-type fried rice. After the space-time secret territory's cooldown was over, Jun Changshao entered it once more. When he came out, his cultivation base had completely recovered. His entire person had become sharper than before. "I can finally crush the experience talisman." After defeating the Grand Evolution's sacred ancestor in the Dragon-Tiger battle for supremacy, he obtained 2 experience talismans, which raised his cultivation to the 5th grade. Now that he had 4 more, he crushed them and successfully broke through to the 7th grade. Other people had to put in a lot of effort to break through. However, he could easily break through with the help of talismans, which could really make all Wu Huang jealous. What was there to be envious about? Didn't I exchange it for managing the sect? Boom! In the training room, Jun Changshao gathered his strength and directly punched the testing machine. As a result, a bunch of random codes appeared. He was stunned and said, "Did my punch break it?" The system said, "The testing machine's strength evaluation has an upper limit. If it exceeds the upper limit, it won't be displayed accurately." "I see." Moreover, if the host fights with a strong opponent at his current level, unless he has overwhelming strength, it's very difficult to determine the outcome of the battle through pure strength value. That's true. After Jun Changshao broke through to the Emperor tier, his use of the Heaven and Earth attribute and Qi domain could not be measured by the value at all. The higher the level, the more important the momentum and moves in battle. For example, the palm print that bombarded Yixingqian could not be measured by strength value. The pressure and deep Heaven and Earth attribute contained in it were already terrifying to the extreme. Give me a few more contribution points to break through to the peak of the Emperor tier and activate the epic mission. After completing it, I'll enter the Saint tier in one go. Jun Changshao said. The system reminded, the host's understanding of Sword Dao is now limited to the Emperor tier. Without a higher level, breaking through to the Saint tier is undoubtedly a fantasy. No problem, I can respawn. Since the store had beginner and middle grade Sword Dao aptitude fluid, there must be upper grade, and divine grade ones. As long as they respawned and were consumed, he would have them. Good luck, the system said. In the past 2 months, Ironbone Town had developed at an extremely fast speed. Not only did it have a large number of permanent residents, but various stores had also opened one after another. Food, drinks, clothes, toys, and necessities were all available. This toys referred to fun, so don't overthink it. Aunt Wang had transformed into the shopkeeper of the Yunlai Inn. The other villagers of Qingyang village had also started businesses, such as a butcher shop, a steamed bun shop, and so on. Help the needy, not the poor. Jun Changshao had given them permanent residency and a big house. Whether they could live in the town in the future depended on themselves. The previous batch of disciples who had passed the assessment but were not accepted into the Sect of All Times also gathered here one after another, waiting to become a disciple of the Sect of All Times. The AI family's medicine store and auction house branch opened for business. The first auction attracted a large number of foreign martial artists. Aunt Wang's inn was crowded with guests. If they could not help, the Sect of All Times disciples would come over to help. Of course. It was also for the sect's mission. The entire Ironbone town became lively as more and more guests came in and out. Occasionally, When they saw the Sect of All Times disciples in their bright school uniforms, their eyes would always be filled with respect and envy. Jun Changshao, who was lying on the roof of the mansion, chewed on a green foxtail. He looked at the martial artists on the street and smiled. He did not expect that building a town would give him a sense of accomplishment as well as developing a sect. Patriarch. Li Luoqiu transmitted her voice, second young master Tang is here to visit. This Ironbone town, which is located at the foot of the Sect of All Times, has great prospects for development. The AI family's auction house is located in the town. The auction at the beginning of every month is also set there. It will definitely attract many martial artists in the long run. No, I have to think of a way to get a store there and extend my family's business there. The Yangzhou families in the southwest who had business foresight had estimated that Ironbone Town would definitely have unlimited potential in the future. Therefore, they all used their connections in hopes of purchasing a piece of land. Unfortunately, Jun Changshao was very strict in his selection. He only allowed the relatives of his disciples and some of the business families in the Qingyang County to move in. There was almost no hope for outsiders to enter. The more it was so, the more the families were tempted. Gradually, it became an extremely glorious thing to be able to enter Ironbone Town and open a business there. A few days later, a shocking news spread throughout the continent. The second young master of the Tang family in the Great Sage Imperial City officially announced that the Tang Pharmacy would open in Ironbone Town. The wealthy Tang family actually opened a pharmacy in Ironbone Town. The Tang Pharmacy has been unusually popular recently. Many big cities in the states and counties have not opened a branch yet, but a small town has already opened one. This is really unexpected. Not long after, another piece of news spread. The Tang family only opened a Tang Pharmacy branch in Ironbone Town. The smart business families immediately realized that the second young master of the Tang family must have discussed with the Sect of All Times. Otherwise, he would not only open a branch in the southwest Yangzhou. The elixirs sold by the Tang Pharmacy have long been famous in the 9 states. The Ironbone Town in the southwest Yangzhou is the only one with a branch. It will definitely attract more martial artists to buy it, which will stimulate the various businesses in the town. Ironbone Town is going to explode. After the second young master of the Tang family made the announcement, the large forces and families in the southwest Yangzhou who had long wanted to buy elixirs rushed over. Even the martial artists from the nearby southern Desolate State and western Cloud State came. The newly built town was filled with people. The degree of prosperity was not inferior to the historical Qingyang city. Chapter 745. The Tang family pill store was set up in the newly built Ironbone Town, and the influence it brought was extremely huge. In terms of distance, the Ironbone Town was obviously more convenient than the central sovereign state. Since the surrounding states and counties had needs, they would definitely not give up on the near and seek the far. The Ironbone Town, which had a large family business, immediately attracted martial warriors from all over the world. As long as they came in, they would definitely have to spend money. Not to mention buying supplies, they would at least need food and lodging. Therefore, the inn that Aunt Wang brought over was full every day, and the business was extremely good. The town was only in the development stage. First, it was to build a reputation and attract traffic. When it reached a certain scale in the future, Jun Changshao would definitely think of a way to profit from it. Jun Patriarch. Tang Ren sat in the hall of the mansion and laughed. The pill store that is set up here, my Tang family is only in name, all the profits will belong to your sect. In order to befriend Jun Changshao on a deeper level, he did not care about profits. After all, he could still continue to develop in other states. Moreover, as the pill business became more and more popular, the old man would often look for him to talk. Occasionally, they would discuss the business and the family's future business plans. Tang Ren was clear that he had received recognition. If it was in the past, although he would occasionally be called over, it would not be so frequent. Coming to the southwest Yangzhou to visit the sect of all times was the right move. It was the right move. Cousin, uncle. Thank you for being merciful and giving me this remote sect. Otherwise, how could I gradually gain the old man's recognition? Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, Jun will accept your invitation. Ha! This guy wasn't modest at all. Tang Ren said, Jun Patriarch, this Tang also operates other businesses, I wonder if it is possible to set up a branch in the Ironbone town. He could see that Jun Changshao wanted to develop the Ironbone town. With the AI family's auction house and pill store, the prospects for development were extremely good, and there was also investment value. No problem. Jun Changshao said. Since he wanted to create a martial arts holy land for the world to worship, the Ironbone town had to be well equipped. The Tang family's various businesses would undoubtedly attract more attention. A few days later, Tang Ren's main business set up a branch in the Ironbone town. There were weapon shops and armor shops, but the main attraction was naturally the spirit stone shop. This was a newly established town, and there weren't even enough permanent residents. Yet, all the facilities were already complete. It was truly amazing. TSK. Many warriors who entered the town walked on the main street that was filled with all kinds of martial arts shops. All of them exclaimed, I'm afraid that the cities in the provinces and counties are nothing more than this. Patriarch. Li Qingyang said, the town is a little small, but it can be expanded at any time. There's no rush. Jun Changshao said, one step at a time, one step at a time. Right now, his main focus was still on the development of the sect. Once the town was built, he would just let nature take its course. Go and call Ziming over, Jun Changshao said. Yes. Li Qingyang retreated. Not long after he left, the Purple King walked in with a toothpick in his mouth. He seemed to be having a good time. Jun Changshao saw that he was wearing red underwear and asked, where's your school uniform? It's not comfortable. The Purple King said, I took it off. Jun Changshao broke down and said, are you an exhibitionist? If you have something to say, say it. If not, I'm going to stand guard, the Purple King said. Knowing that this guy was a spirit beast and a little unruly, Jun Changshao didn't mind. Instead, he asked seriously, what egg are you talking about? The Purple King, who was originally quite arrogant, almost had the urge to squat in a corner and cry when he heard the word, egg. Damn it. If it wasn't for this egg, would this king have ended up like this? But, then again, that was not the case. It didn't seem to be a loss to eat the food cooked by the little girl every day. The king was no longer the king of the past. In just a few days, he had forgotten his ambition for the throne. The egg I'm talking about is the egg guarded by the fire dragon, the Purple King said. It was indeed related to the little dragon. Jun Changshao asked curiously, you laid that egg? The Purple King's expression suddenly froze. Then, he couldn't control his emotions and roared, I'm a male. How can I lay an egg? Then who laid it? Jun Changshao asked. The Purple King calmed down and said angrily, I picked up this egg. Where did you pick it up? The upper realm. The upper realm? Jun Changshao's eyes were filled with astonishment. He said, come, tell me everything. If you hide anything, don't come to the cafeteria to eat in the future. The Purple King said angrily, you're threatening me. Yes. The Purple King clenched his fist. He thought about how he would live in the future if he couldn't eat Lu Wancher's food. Sigh. He sighed and said, it's like this. The Purple King was not a native of the Falling Star continent. He came from the upper realm. Unlike Hiwudi, who was forced to come down because he couldn't take out the secret manual, he committed some crimes. Back then, he heard from someone that eating dragon eggs could improve his skills for thousands of years. So, he sneaked to the Dragon Clan's territory to steal the eggs. The eggs had been stolen, but they had also been discovered. The Purple King's strength was absolutely invincible in the lower realm at that time, but he definitely couldn't defeat the Dragon Clan powerhouses. He could only activate the fugitive mode. On the way, no matter how he boiled or stewed the eggs, he couldn't even break them open. Not only did his strength not improve, but he was also chased by the Dragon Clan powerhouses all over the world. This was undoubtedly a tragedy. In desperation, he could only forcefully tear open space and escape to the Falling Star continent. However, during the process of traveling, he was inevitably bound by heaven and earth. His realm was suppressed to a miserable state. So, Jun Chengxiao's eyes lit up. He said, "You stole a dragon egg." "It's not just a dragon egg," the Purple King said seriously. "Later, when I was escaping, I heard that it was a 5-clawed dragon egg that only appears once in 100,000 years. Once it hatches, it can cultivate for tens of thousands of years and become the emperor of the Dragon Clan." Jun Chengxiao heard this and suddenly widened his eyes. He had previously fantasized that the parents of the original owner of this body might be mighty beings and that he was hiding his identity. He didn't expect that the little dragon was hiding a secret. No wonder this little guy can condense the 5-clawed dragon form. It's not an illusion, but a real body. Jun Chengxiao understood. Creatures like dragons were definitely the top. The 5-clawed dragon was a symbol of imperial power. It was really cool to have it become his contract beast. "You stole a future emperor of the Dragon Clan. You deserve it when they chase you all over the world," Jun Chengxiao said. At the mention of this, the Purple King had the urge to cry. "I just wanted to improve my strength and then lead my subordinates to conquer the world. In the end, I stole a 5-clawed dragon egg of all things. After causing such a big mess, I couldn't stay in the upper realm anymore. I could only come to the lower realm to lie low for a while. The worst thing was, when I was almost healed in the Falling Star continent, I gathered the local beasts and prepared to do something big. Before I could do anything, I was suppressed by Wu Sheng." "And then?" Jun Chengxiao asked. The Purple King continued to speak. "In fact, there was nothing else after that. It just brought the egg down and tried to break it open, fantasizing about eating it to improve its power. However, it failed repeatedly. Before it was sealed, it came up with a bad idea to hatch it with a fire dragon." Jun Chengxiao broke down. "Come on, although both of them have the word dragon, they're not even the same species. It's not like I'm at my wit's end," the Purple King said frantically. In those years, no one could understand the embarrassment of being chased by so many dragon powerhouses because of the egg. No one could understand the pain of looking at an egg to quench one's thirst. And this was the youth that had once passed away. Jun Chengxiao took a sip of tea and said with a smile, "It's all thanks to your idea that I inadvertently obtained a 5-clawed dragon egg and a contract beast with such an awesome identity." The Purple Barrow Demon was shocked. "The egg hatched?" Chapter 746. Standing in the Patriarch's study, the Purple King's mouth twitched as he looked at the little dragon that resembled both a snake and a lizard. "This was hatched from a 5-clawed dragon egg?" "Yes." Jun Chengxiao nodded. The Purple King spread his legs and pointed at the little dragon. His expression was crumbling as he roared, "Who are you kidding? It's obviously a lizard." He must have seen the true form of a dragon in the upper realm. It was impossible for a 5-clawed dragon egg to hatch such a thing, unless what was stolen was not a dragon egg but a century egg. "It hatched from the egg you stole, there's no doubt about that," Jun Chengxiao said. If he had not seen the little dragon transform into its 5-clawed form, he might have doubted whether that fellow stole the wrong egg. "Maybe." Jun Chengxiao paused and said, "Something went wrong during the incubation process." The Purple King asked, "What went wrong?" Jun Chengxiao did not explain to it. However, he guessed that the little dragon's current body did not look like a dragon, and it was most likely due to him using the incubator to hatch it and forcefully mutating it. If that was the case, the little dragon's true identity should be a mutated five-clawed dragon. It was originally the most noble species of the dragon clan. If it mutated again, it would be terrible. As its master, would it not follow its master and ascend to the heavens? The system said, "This description is very beautiful." "Impossible, impossible." The Purple King said firmly, "This is definitely not an egg I stole, you must be lying to me." He had risked his life to steal an egg in the upper realm and imagined that eating it could improve his skills. He would never accept that it hatched, and would never accept that it hatched into such a thing. If it was a five-clawed dragon, it would have accepted that it was hunted by the dragon clan for a long time and was forced to descend to the lower realm. However, it had fallen to such a state because of a century egg. This blow was unbearable. "Master," the little dragon said lazily, "who's this naked fellow?" Because he had not figured out the reason, Jun Changshao did not let it meet the Purple King. "Same kind." "Same kind?" Little dragon squinted its eyes and said, "I can see the contempt in its eyes." It had to be done. If it was a five-clawed dragon, the Purple King might be a little afraid, but a small lizard was nothing to him. "Little fellow," it said proudly, "you should call me king." "King." Little Longlong's eyes narrowed into a line, and his skin turned even redder than before. "What?" The Purple King straightened his back and said proudly, "You're still not convinced?" "Master," Little Longlong asked, "can I control him?" "Mess with me?" The Purple King smiled. Even if this guy was a five-clawed dragon, he was still in his infancy stage. Forget about him in his peak state, he could even press him down on the ground with one hand. Jun Changshao said, "My contracted beast wants to fight with you." The Purple King said indifferently, "To be frank, only Xiao Ziji's weapon can hurt me in the sect. Who else is qualified to fight me?" Boom, before he could finish, his face suddenly tilted, and his body flew out of the window like a cannonball. Ka ka ka. His face slid more than 10 feet away on the stone floor of the training ground. Jun Changshao retracted his fist and said, "I can do it." The Purple King, who stood up from the training ground, covered his burning face, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. This human clearly didn't have any martial aura. How did he suddenly become so strong? And from the power of that punch, he was probably not inferior to the human Piku Huang. During this period of time, he had already recovered, and it was time to find trouble. Coincidentally, Jun Patriarch had also recovered, and even advanced by 2 ranks. He could still beat this guy. "Let's go to the training ground in the outer court." Jun Changshao walked out and said, "You two can spar." The Purple King shook his head and said indignantly, "Do I look so weak that any Tom, Dick, or Harry dares to bully me?" While thinking, he had already walked to the outer court. As he looked at the small lizard following behind Jun Changshao, the disdain in his eyes grew even stronger. "No. I have to show them my strength in this sect and let them know how terrifying I am. As the king of the beast race, even if I'm immersed in delicious food, I have to establish my prestige since I'm here." Stupid humans. You can only look up to this king's strength. Huff huff. The moment he walked out of the outer court, the Purple King immediately released an invisible aura. That was the dignity of a king of the beast race that couldn't be trampled on. "Master." Little Long Long looked back and said telepathically, "This guy is a little arrogant." Jun Changshao said, "I'll teach him a lesson later." Although the Purple King had become a disciple, he still didn't have a sense of identity with the sect. It was necessary to teach him a lesson to improve their relationship. Ta! The Purple King, who was wearing only red underwear, stood in the training ground in the outer court, his face still showing the arrogance of a king. Little Long Long also walked up. Su Xiaoma, who was passing by, hurriedly came up and said, "Patriarch, are they going to fight?" "Yes." Jun Changshao said. Su Xiaoma's eyes lit up, and then he activated the group telepathic technique. In a short while, a large number of disciples gathered outside the training ground, and they were discussing in low voices. Seeing so many people watching the battle, the Purple King's face became even more arrogant, and he thought to himself, "It's time to establish my dominance." "Little Long Long, go easy on him," Su Xiaoma said. "Yes," Li Fei said, "after all, he just entered the sect, and there are so many people watching." Chapter 747. Ta. Little Long Long, in his second form, walked out of the arena, dragging one of the Purple King's feet. The latter's entire body was charred black by the flames, his eyes rolled up, and white foam kept coming out of his mouth. When the surrounding Eternal Sect disciples saw how miserably their junior brother Zi Huan was being abused, they all looked at him with heartache. Sigh. Su Xiaoma shook his head. He had expected the outcome, but he did not expect it to be so miserable. Plop. Little Long Long threw the Purple King to the ground and said lightly, "Who is the king?" The Purple King felt a burning pain all over his body. He could no longer speak, but his eyes flashed with anger, and more than that, he was on the verge of collapse. Being sent flying by Jun Changxiao's punch was enough to hurt his self-esteem. In the end, he was beaten black and blue by Little Long Long. He did not establish his prestige, and today, he was completely defeated. How could he show his face in the sect in the future? It's okay, it's okay. This king deliberately let him win, this king deliberately created an illusion. With this thought, the Purple King felt much better. After failing too many times, it had refined a heart with an extremely strong endurance. Of course. Little Long Long's strength also made the Purple King think seriously. Could it really be a five-clawed dragon? No, even if it was a dragon, it could not master the fire element. Could it really be like what the patriarch said, that something went wrong during the incubation process? After being sent flying by Jun Changxiao's punch and being tortured by Little Long Long, the Purple King's arrogance was immediately restrained. Every day, he was responsible for opening the door and going to the cafeteria to eat on time. The disciples of the sect of all times also entered cultivation mode, quietly waiting for the cooldown of the life and death secret realm to end. Jun Changxiao had been thinking. If Little Long Long was the future emperor of the dragon race, would the dragon race come to find him one day? That guy stole the egg a long time ago. If they wanted to find him, they would have found him long ago. The system said. Jun Changxiao said, "That's true." However, the system said, "Host, it's better to be careful. If they really come and see Little Long Long's current state, they might cut you into pieces." Jun Changxiao's mouth twitched. He still had the confidence to wrestle with the martial artists of the Falling Star continent, but he was definitely afraid of facing the martial artists of the upper realm. Xing Chen's enemy is in the upper realm. Now, Little Long Long is also related to the dragon clan in the upper realm. My sect has yet to dominate the Falling Star continent. Why are we encountering so many troublesome matters? Jun Changxiao gradually calmed down and focused his attention on the development of the sect. No matter what kind of storm they faced in the future, he and his disciples would have to face it with unyielding resolve. Lu Qianqian was also cultivating. However, when the two disciples of Taishian Xingzong appeared, she would often stand alone on the mountain peak, looking as if she had a lot on her mind. In the study, Jun Changxiao looked through the window at the distant figure floating like an immortal and murmured, "Is this still my eldest disciple who is indifferent to everything?" Patriarch. The next day, Li Luoqiu reported, "Shuo Chaochuan of Zhenyang County has started a war again." "That guy really can't stay idle," Jun Changxiao said. Li Luoqiu reported other information in succession, but there was very little information about Fang Lingyu, let alone any conflicts with Lu Qianqian. "This information collection is a little bad," Jun Changxiao said. Li Luoqiu said helplessly, "Fang Lingyu has always been staying in Taishian Xingzong. Our spies can't infiltrate at all. Unless there are spies, it's very difficult to find out. Spies? Jun Changshao touched his chin and said, that's a good idea. As the sect's prestige increased, many forces with ulterior motives would send spies. Fortunately, there were restrictions in the system, so they could not do as they wished. Since they liked to play spy, then he couldn't fall behind. There was no harm in finding some disciples with good aptitude and strength to infiltrate other sects as spies. Li Luoqiu said, Taixuan Xingzong is one of the top first-rate sections. Sending spies in would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. As difficult as ascending to the heavens? The corners of Jun Changxiao's mouth rose into a smile as he said, do you think that this king would be rejected if he pretended to be one of the applicants? They won't. Li Luoqiu recognized the patriarch's strength and aptitude. If he didn't become a sect master and went to a sect as a disciple, then all the top sects would definitely fight over him. Li Luoqiu said in surprise, Patriarch plans to personally go to Taixuan Xingzong as a spy and investigate Lu Qianqian? I'm just saying, Jun Changshao said. Although going undercover in Taixuan Xingzong as an applicant seemed like a good opportunity, he didn't have time to do it. If he didn't go, he would let others go. Little Mo, Jun Changshao called Su Xiaoma over and said, eldest senior sister is being bullied. Can you tolerate it? These words were a bit off. Thinking about it was just thinking, Su Xiaoma said seriously, Patriarch, let alone eldest senior sister, I can't tolerate it if any of my fellow disciples are being bullied. Jun Changshao patted him on the shoulder and said, so I'm giving you a glorious and difficult task now. Glorious and difficult? Su Xiaoma hurriedly straightened his body and said, Patriarch, please tell me. Jun Changshao said, I've just received news that Taixuan Xingzong is about to open the mountain gate and recruit disciples. You're fast and smart. Pretend to be an applicant and sneak in to gather important information for the sect. Huh? Su Xiaoma was dumbfounded. The patriarch wanted him to be a spy. Do you have the confidence to complete it? Yes. Get ready, get ready. We'll set off immediately. Yes. That day, Su Xiaoma left the sect of all times with the disciples sending him off. After walking out of southwest Yangzhou, he took out a thin mask and put it on his face. His entire person instantly turned into a slightly pale youth. This was a magically modified facial mask. Jun Changshao was forced to buy this product from the shop when he refreshed. Not only could it be used for beauty, it could also be used to disguise one's appearance. It had even been tested. Even the Grand Elder of Extreme Coldness Palace couldn't use his spiritual sense to spy on his true appearance. It was really a must-have item for traveling and killing people. Patriarch. Su Xiaoma said with a determined gaze, I won't let you down. Under the setting sun, his elongated back was walking step by step on the path of being a spy. Patriarch. Li Qingyang, who was standing at the mountain gate, couldn't help but feel a little worried. Junior brother Su won't be in danger this time, right? Jun Changshao said, this kid is very sly. There won't be any danger. There were many disciples in the sect of all times who met the requirements to enter a first-rate sect, such as Xiao Ziji and Long Xiang. However, if it came to being a spy, Su Xiaoma was definitely the most suitable. Of course. Before he left, Jun Changshao specially reminded him that he only needed to sneak in and find out about Lu Qianqian and Fang Lingyu. There was no need to go undercover for several years and then stand on the rooftop and say that he wanted to be a good person. Ironbone Town. On the crowded main street, a young man in a kasaya walked among the crowd. The passers-by were surprised. Is he a Buddhist cultivator? Tisk tsk, that's rare. Shouldn't Buddhist cultivators shave their heads? Why does he still have hair? The crowd discussed in low voices. The monk stopped and turned to the passers-by. I cultivate with hair. Cultivate with hair. Cultivate with hair. Aha! The pet lying on his shoulder like a cat yawned and said lazily, "Where is this place?" Azure Sun County, Ironbone Town. He escaped from Huayang County so quickly. The monk's mouth twitched. Without a doubt, this guy was Monk Du Nan who appeared in the southern Barren state. After he brought the spiritual cat into Huayang County, he went to convert evil cultivators whenever he saw one. In the end, not only did he not convert a single one, he angered the crowd and was hunted down. In the end, he could only escape to the nearby Azure Sun County. Don't lower yourself to her level. Amitabha. Dunan put his palms together and said, "Children's words carry no harm, Pinseng will not take it to heart." As he spoke, he intentionally or unintentionally looked at the little girl who was gradually disappearing from his sight. He said to himself, "I keep feeling that something is wrong." As for what exactly was wrong, he couldn't tell. The psychic cat said, "This little girl is so cute. I really want to be lifted up high by her." Sect of all times. Yao Menjing walked into the cafeteria and found a place to sit down. She put her little chin on the table and her eyes were full of disappointment. Lu Wancher, who was busy cooking in the kitchen, called her twice. Seeing that there was no response, she walked over and said, "Little junior sister, why do you look so unhappy?" "Senior sister." Yao Menjing was slightly irritated. "I just met a monk under the town." Lu Wancher said, "Did he bully you?" "No." Yao Menjing said, "I don't know why, but when I see him, I feel irritated and have the urge to beat him up." Lu Wancher smiled and said, "Is it because you are too tired from helping at the inn and are in a bad mood? You don't like anyone?" "Maybe." Yao Menjing tried to calm her restless mood and said with a smile, "Senior sister, let me help you wash the vegetables." At night, Du Nan sat cross-legged on the roof of the Yunlai Inn. The prayer beads in his hand fluctuated, and strands of golden light spread out and shrouded the whole town. Found it. He suddenly opened his eyes and locked his gaze on the Iron Bone Mountain. With a solemn expression, he said, "There are heretic cultivators inside." The psychic cat said, "This seems to be a sect. Do you want to ask around tomorrow?" "No need." Du Nan picked it up, leaped up, and walked up the mountain. He said, "Subduing demons is imminent." Feeling the whistling wind, the psychic cat howled in its heart, "The journey of escape is about to begin again." Whoosh! Whoosh! Du Nan's movement technique was not bad. With a few ups and downs, he jumped up from the side mountain and landed lightly on the martial arts practice field in the outer courtyard. He did not pass through the mountain gate, worried that he would be discovered by others. "Why do I feel that it is no different from being a thief?" the psychic cat said in a low voice. "Shoo." Du Nan made a shushing sound. This time, he did not come to hurt the other people living inside. He only came to convert the heretic cultivators he found. Then, who did Du Nan find? It was none other than Mo Shang, who was half heretic and half devil cultivator. In fact, the strongest heretic cultivator in the sect of all times was definitely the evil saint of 5 treasures. However, he hid it well, and it was difficult for Buddhist cultivators who were not high enough to find him. Whoosh! Du Nan used his movement technique and walked toward the inner courtyard of the sect of all times. He was extremely careful along the way. Even when his feet landed on the ground, he did not stir up any energy waves. However, when he approached the room where Mo Shang was, before he even got close to the window, a cold object was directly pressed against his forehead. Xiao Ziji walked out from the dark with an AWM sniper rifle in one hand. He shook his head and said, "Sneaking around in someone's sect in the middle of the night, this is not good behavior." Benefactor. Although Du Nan did not know what the AWM sniper rifle was, he could smell danger. He instinctively stepped back and raised his hands, saying, "This poor monk has no ill intentions." No ill intentions? A voice came from behind. Who are you trying to fool? Dunan moved his eyes with difficulty and tragically found that there were many people standing in the inner courtyard. They were either leaning against the door of the room or crossing their arms with a smile on their faces. That's not right. I have cultivated the reed crossing the river movement technique to the extreme. I shouldn't have been discovered if I flew over so silently. Dunan did not realize that when he flew from the inn to Mount Ironbone, many disciples of the sect of all times had already noticed him in an instant. He hid in the inner courtyard's room with a good sense of self. In fact, everyone was releasing their spiritual senses and quietly watching his performance. Sorry. Dunan said, sorry to disturb you. Whoosh. He used the reed crossing the river movement technique. As soon as he turned around, Li Fei's right leg swept over. Bang Dunan could not withstand such a strong force at all. His whole body flew backward like a cannonball. In the end, he used his head to slide a few feet on the stone floor. He almost lost all his hair. The psychic cat fell and saw him rolling his eyes. The corner of its mouth twitched and it broke down. I told you, it's a miracle that you can live until now. Suddenly, it felt that it was floating. It hurriedly turned its head and saw a little girl lifting it up. She blinked and said, "What a cute kitten." He he he. Little girl, you're cute too. However, Boom the psychic cat was ruthlessly pressed to the ground and intimately touched the stone floor. Xiao Maxian raised her hand and grabbed it again. Then, she continued to smash it to the ground. She said coldly, sneaking into the master's sect without permission, no matter how cute you are, you will be punished. Its dream during the day came true. It was picked up by the little lowly, raised high, and then, fiercely slammed down. Xiao Ziji and the others' mouths twitched. She had a doting look on her face just now, and then she went berserk. The character of this contract beast of the patriarch was completely unpredictable. Chapter 749. Creak. Plop. Plop. The cell opened and Dunan and the spiritual cat were thrown in. The former's head was bald, obviously rubbed off by the stone slab. The latter's face was swollen, obviously from Xiao Maxian's slaps. Zhao Daodu, who had just fallen asleep, heard the commotion and hurriedly stood up. He subconsciously shrank into a corner and whispered, "It can't be another spirit beast, right?" "Who?" Dunan struggled to get up and sat down. He said with difficulty, "If I don't go to hell, who will?" "You, if you want to go to hell, can you not drag me along?" The spiritual cat lay on the ground, wanting to cry but having no tears. It looked as if it had nothing left to live for. When it came up, it thought that its journey of escape would begin again. However, it didn't expect to be captured and ruthlessly beaten up by the little lowly. Although that feeling, was a little special, the pain it brought was still too much for its small body to bear. Dunan had to be praised here. After Jun Changshao bought the sect protecting array, he was the first to sneak into the sect of all times. If it were anyone else, even if they knew that the sect protecting array wasn't activated, they still wouldn't dare to come up. This was because those who lived inside were all monstrous geniuses. Entering through illegal means was the same as entering hell. The next day, the cell door opened and Jun Changshao walked in. He glanced at Dunan, who seemed to be meditating, and said, "Are you from the Great Tang of the East?" Yesterday, he also discovered this guy. His cultivation was at most at the level of Wuzong, so he didn't take him to heart. Ba. Dunan put his palms together and said, "Benefactor, this poor monk has no evil intentions." "No evil intentions?" Jun Changshao said, "Then why did you come to my sect of all times?" "This poor monk is here for." Dunan was startled and blurted out, "Sect of all times?" During this time, although he had been converting people and didn't have time to watch the dragon-tiger battle for hegemony, he still had some understanding of the sects that were competing. The main reason was that he was in a state of escape. He was too excited to find the evil cultivator. If he calmed down or asked around in town, he would definitely know what sect was on the mountain. It's over, the psychic cat, who was lying on the ground and pretending to be dead, thought to itself, this time, I'm completely screwed. It's hard to say if I'll be able to leave this place alive. You don't know? Jun Changshao asked. Dunan smiled bitterly and said, Benefactor, this penniless monk only discovered that there were evil cultivators on the mountain, so I came to convert them. I didn't know it was the sect of all times. Ha! So he was a monk who subdued demons and devils. Jun Changshao said, It's true that there are heretical cultivators in my sect, but they've always been cultivating on the mountain. They've never left the mountain to harm others. Why should I enlighten them? Dunan seriously said, the cultivation method of heretical cultivators is the same as that of devil cultivators. The longer they cultivate, the harder it is for them to stabilize their state of mind. As a result, they can't control their emotions and do evil things. Although this poor monk's cultivation is shallow, it's still my duty to enlighten them. As the saying goes, stop. Jun Changshao hurriedly stopped him and said, You sneaked into the sect of all times without permission. According to the law, you should be executed. Ah! The psychic cat, who was pretending to be dead, jumped up and said with tears in its eyes, I haven't lived long enough. However, Jun Changshao said, in consideration of the virtue of caring for all living things, this penniless monk has decided to spare your lives. Thank you, thank you. The psychic cat hurriedly said. The death penalty is unavoidable, but it's hard to escape punishment. Jun Changshao said, Stay in the sect and clean the courtyard first. It just so happens that I'm lacking a real sweeping monk here. Dunan said with a dignified expression, If Benefactor allows this penniless monk to enlighten that devil cultivator, not to mention sweeping the floor, I can even clean the latrines. This guy had really entered Buddhism. He was completely unaware of his own situation and still wanted to enlighten the heretical cultivator. Jun Changshao said, Cultivation requires cultivation of the heart. To enlighten others, one must enlighten oneself. You keep talking about enlightening others, but have you enlightened yourself? From your hesitant eyes, I can see that your understanding of Buddhism is only on the surface level. Wait until you understand yourself before you enlighten others. Jun Changshao got up and left, but when he reached the door of the prison, he said, If one's heart is calculative, one will encounter obstacles everywhere. If one doesn't investigate people, one won't be angry. Always investigating right and wrong is not something a Buddhist disciple should do. The system said, You really know how to talk nonsense. Dunan sat cross-legged in the prison cell. The expression on his face gradually froze because every word Jun Changshao said impacted his knowledge. Especially that sentence cultivation requires cultivation of the heart. To enlighten others, one must enlighten oneself. Thinking back to the past, he had always been rushing forward on the path of enlightening others. When had he ever considered himself? Amitabha. Dunan clasped his palms and silently chanted, his face showing shame. The next day. In the inner courtyard, there was an extra monk wearing a kasaya with no hair on the left side of his head. He was holding a broom and sweeping the courtyard. As for the outer courtyard, it was handed over to the Grand Elder of the Extreme Cold Palace. There were closed-door disciples, and there were also cleaners in the inner and outer courtyards. The sect of all times facilities were getting more and more complete. Why did the patriarch keep this guy? He sneaked up. How can we not let him do some hard work? The disciples passing by whispered. Dunan didn't care. While sweeping, he thought about what Jun Changshao said yesterday. He felt more and more guilty about his own understanding of Buddhism. Sigh. I've been led astray. Damn bald donkey, don't block the way. At this moment, Yao Menjing walked out of the side room with her hands on her hips and said with a scowl. Dunan looked up and said in surprise, It's you. I told you not to block the way. Are you deaf? Didn't you hear me? Yao Menjing said angrily. It ba. Du Nan stepped aside with the principle of a good man not fighting with a woman. Yao Menjing walked over angrily, then found Jun Changshao and said, Patriarch, that guy is very annoying. Can you drive him away? No hurry, no hurry. Jun Changshao said, let him sweep for a few more days. In fact, he had been thinking about whether he should convert this Buddhist cultivator into a disciple of the sect of all times. After all, to establish the strongest sect on the continent, one had to at least be all-inclusive. What's more, Yao Menjing was a demonic cultivator. If she could establish a friendship with a Buddhist cultivator, it meant that in this world, the righteous and demonic cultivators could coexist peacefully. They might not have to fight to the death when they met. Patriarch. At this moment, Li Luoqiu hurried over and said, Disciple Ren Shan went out to do a mission and found a place where the spiritual aura recovered in a valley. It's very likely that there are spirit stone veins. What? Jun Changshao immediately stood up and said with great joy, this kid is really a koi. 1,000 miles east of Mount Iron Bone, there was an old forest deep in the mountains. Sect of all times disciple Ren Shan received a mission to collect some kind of medicinal herb and came here. Because the environment was too complicated, he got lost after entering and came to a valley in a daze. When he saw the flickering light, he was sure that it was a sign of the recovery of spiritual aura, so he hurriedly used the sound transmission technique to contact the sect. This guy had once found a spirit stone vein in the Black Devil Forest's cave, and now that he had found it again when he went out, his luck was simply exploding. However, Ren Shan was not happy at all. Because at the entrance of the valley, more than 10 warriors suddenly appeared, claiming that they were the first to discover the place where the spiritual aura had recovered, and told him to leave quickly. Bullshit. Ren Shan argued, I was the one who discovered it. If you want to leave, it's you guys who should leave. He was so sure that the valley had a natural restriction that spiritual sense could not discover. Before he entered, the entrance was covered with cobwebs, which meant that no one had entered. It was indeed Ren Shan who discovered it first. However, the recovery of spiritual aura would cause a natural phenomenon. This group of people happened to be training in the forest and rushed over when they saw the rising light. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to discover it. Cut the crap. The man in the lead said with a cold gaze, hurry up and scram, or else you won't be able to keep your life. Ta! Ren Shan stood at the entrance and said, this was discovered by my sect of all times first. You guys should be the ones to scram. Sect of all times? The leader's expression changed slightly as he came to a realization. I was wondering why you were so fearless. So it's the disciple of the sect who won the Dragon Tiger battle. Senior brother. Someone beside him lowered his voice and said, this sect is not to be trifled with. The one called Senior Brother said, there is a recovery of spiritual aura in the valley, so there must be a spirit stone vein hidden. When the time comes, it will definitely attract many large sections. We have to take the initiative to gain more initiative for the sect, and no matter how awesome their sect of all times is, how could they monopolize the entire vein? How about this? He said, we discovered this place together. Ren Shan could tell that these people were afraid of his sect and did not dare to go too far. He said, do you guys have any shame? Huff huff. At this moment, a stream of light flew over from afar and hovered in midair. A middle-aged man appeared and said in surprise, I didn't expect this place to have a sign of recovery of spiritual aura. He looked down and saw that someone had already discovered it. He frowned and said, kids down there, leave this place quickly. The faces of the few martial artists changed. Hovering in midair was enough to show that this person was definitely a powerhouse at the level of Wu Huang. Hence, they left in a panic. Why are you still here? The middle-aged man looked at Ren Shan with a hint of displeasure in his eyes. Ren Shan also knew that this guy was very strong, but he still stood guard at the entrance and said, I discovered this place of recovery of spiritual aura. Why should I leave? You discovered it first? The middle-aged man smiled and said, Little guy, in this world, some things don't belong to whoever discovers them first, but to whoever has the ability to obtain them. So. He raised his finger and pointed into the distance, saying coldly, I'll count to 3. Leave quickly. 1. 2. Ren Shan still stood in front of the valley. Although his heart was already at its limit, the sect's #1 mission kept ringing in his ears, forcing him to work hard to maintain his iron and unyielding backbone. I can't leave. Chapter 750. When Jun Changshao learned that Ren Shan had discovered the place where the spiritual energy had recovered, he immediately flew over. He was so fast that it was as if he was in a hurry to reincarnate. Although the Iron Bone Mountain mine had not been emptied, the number of disciples was increasing. It was obviously a little tight. Of course, the spirit gathering formation and the mystic realm were one of the important factors to improve the strength of the disciples. However, consumables like spirit stones were also indispensable. No matter how small the mine that Ren Shan discovered was, Jun Changshao had to pay attention to it. This was because this kind of resource was too difficult to find on the continent. It was the same for all the major sections. In order to be able to develop for a long time, they would spend a lot of manpower and resources to explore the spirit stone mine. It could be said that the spirit stone mine in the place where the spiritual energy had recovered was the most precious wealth in the Falling Star continent. It was the fuse that caused the sects to be willing to become enemies and even fight. Who threw it? Jun Changshao caught Ren Shan, who was flying over. His face was covered with frost. The few martial artists who were fleeing below saw this and couldn't help but shiver. It was him. The patriarch of the sect of all times. Jun Changshao had forcefully shown his face several times in the dragon and tiger battle for hegemony. These people naturally recognized him at a glance. From the light screen, this guy was a little naughty and deserved a beating. They didn't expect that his aura would be so frightening when they saw him in person. In fact, Jun Patriarch was very easygoing and didn't put on airs. The main reason was that Ren Shan was thrown out. If he didn't catch him, he would have fallen half to death. That was why he was angry. Regardless of whether it was the inner or outer sect, he treated everyone equally and regarded them as his treasures. Naturally, he couldn't bear to be bullied by outsiders. Patriarch. Ren Shan calmed his mind and pointed to the valley. That's the place where the spiritual energy had recovered. He could have complained immediately, but he chose to tell the area where the spirit stone mine was because he thought that it was a small matter. He had no choice but to join the sect of all times. However, ever since he lived there, Ren Shan's mentality had changed. He also fell deeply in love with the sect of all times and was deeply proud of himself as a disciple. Jun Changshao's sect had a kind of magical power that could subtly change a person and slowly give rise to a sense of accomplishment and pride. If one had to describe it accurately, it didn't seem like a sect at all. It was more like a warm home. The people in the same sect were more like brothers and sisters. There were laughter and banter, and there were also feelings that transcended friendship and were not philosophical. Jun Changshao put Ren Shan down and looked at the middle-aged man hanging above the mouth of the valley. The middle-aged man also looked at him and said with a smile, Jun Patriarch is quite fast. Although he said that, he was surprised. The patriarch of the sect of all times was young, but he was already an emperor realm cultivator. The rumor that Wu Sheng had defeated the Grand Elder of the Extreme Coldness Palace was most likely true. Just what kind of divine ability is it that can instantly raise his cultivation base to such a high level? The middle-aged man thought to himself. Jun Changshao said, You were the one who lost her. I was worried that your disciple would be in danger standing at the entrance of the valley, so I told him to stay away. The middle-aged man smiled. Whoosh! Jun Changshao activated the mechanical wings behind him and rushed over in an instant. He had the ability to fly, and with the help of the armament wings, this guy's speed could be said to be extremely fast. Ka ka ka. At the same time, he also activated his battle form. His right fist was instantly covered in steel, and a powerful spiritual energy burst out. Jun Changshao didn't care if the middle-aged man was thinking about the safety of his disciple. Since he had thrown her out without any sense of propriety, there was only one thought in his mind: to give him a punch. Not much. Just one punch. So fast. The middle-aged man's expression changed greatly. Before he could do anything, Jun Changshao's fist had already pierced through the void and blasted toward him. The surrounding space was torn apart by the violent force. Bang! The few martial artists who were running away heard the explosion behind them. They looked back in horror and saw spiritual energy surging toward them like a flood. They were so scared that their scalps were about to explode. Whoosh! 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 The remaining power spread and swept them all away. Then, they either crashed into trees or rocks, and fell to the ground in an extremely sorry state. This was a classic example of immortals fighting, and the little ones suffering. They were still relatively far from the entrance of the valley. If they were a little closer, their meridians would have been shattered, and in serious cases, they would have died. Senior brother, a martial artist struggled to get up and leaned against a rock. His eyes were filled with extreme horror. The martial artist called senior brother stood up in a sorry state and looked at the area where the sound came from. His eyes almost popped out. At the entrance of the mountain, Jun Changshao stood proudly with his right arm equipped with armament wings. At this moment, if he was bald and had dead fish eyes, wearing tights and a cloak, it would be right in front of him. The area had sunk into a deep pit with a radius of more than 10 meters. The surrounding trees and rocks had collapsed. The whole scene could be described as extremely embarrassing. The middle-aged man was gone. Senior brother, where is that Wu Huang? A disciple endured the pain and asked. The senior brother's mouth twitched. How would I know? Whoosh! Jun Changshao dispelled the armament wings on his right hand. Immediately, he gathered spiritual energy and turned it into a giant hand that extended towards the deep pit. Several martial artists saw with their own eyes that the missing middle-aged man was pulled out. The left side of his face was sunken in, all his teeth had fallen out, and his head was tilted backwards. He seemed to be half dead. Combined with the explosion just now and the deep pit in the ground, this was definitely being beaten down from the sky. The perpetrator was definitely the patriarch of the sect of all times. Jun Changshao controlled the giant hand and bound the middle-aged man in the air. He said indifferently, "It's very dangerous here. I'll send you away." Damn it. The man still hadn't fainted and was still conscious. He said with a ferocious expression, Do you know who I am, who? Jun Changshao asked. The middle-aged man said intermittently, I'm an elder of the Luminous Light Holy Sect, Luminous Light Holy Sect. Jun Changshao had heard of this sect before. Although it didn't participate in the Battle of Dragons and Tigers, it was still a solid first-rate sect. No wonder he dared to abandon his disciple. It turned out that he had a strong backing. After hearing the middle-aged man's identity, the expressions of several martial artists changed drastically. An elder of a first-rate sect. Definitely an existence that their sect could not afford to offend. This is a little troublesome. Jun Changshao frowned. The place of spirit energy recovery was discovered by a first-rate sect. It would probably be a little difficult to monopolize it. Even if no one from the Luminous Light Holy Sect came, it would be difficult to secretly take over the Spirit Stone mine because the phenomenon had already risen. When the time came, it would definitely attract all forces. Seeing Jun Changshao frown, the middle-aged man sneered with difficulty and said, daring to injure me is equivalent to sowing enmity with the luminous light holy sect. So what? Jun Changshao said indifferently, you have to pay the price for bullying my disciple. Not to mention first-rate sects, even people from the upper realm are no exception. Swoosh. As soon as he said that, he controlled the giant hand to press down and directly slammed the middle-aged man to the ground. Several martial artists were dumbfounded. That guy had already revealed his identity, but he still dared to continue being violent. Wasn't this equivalent to offending the luminous light holy sect to death? Awoo! Awoo! At this moment, a series of wolf howls came from the mountain forest. The disciples of the sect of all times led by Li Qingyang rushed over on their hurricane wolves. For a moment, thousands of people gathered outside the valley where the phenomenon rose. There were disciples of the sect of all times, as well as elders like Jiangya. Patriarch Zhen Dejuan said solemnly, the phenomenon has already formed. It will definitely attract many forces. Set up a thunder array around the valley, Jun Changshao said. Yes. Zhen Dejuan immediately busied himself, and his gaze became even more fervent. He already had a premonition that he could display the art of explosion soon. I've sinned. Jun Changshao pointed to a high point and said, set up the field cannons. Yes. Xiao Ziji flew over and set up the field cannons. Everyone on guard. Jun Changshao said in a deep voice, guard this valley for me. No one is allowed to take half a step into the lightning pool. Chapter 751. Jun Changshao really didn't put Wu Huang in his eyes. However, the spirit stone lode that was about to be unearthed in the valley, he had to take it for himself no matter what, because it was related to the future development of the sect. Now that the sky above the valley had already spread out and was discovered by outsiders, it was no longer possible to hide like in the Iron Bone Mountain. The only way was to prepare for battle in advance. Just as the elder of the Bright Light Sacred Sect said, it didn't belong to whoever discovered it first, but to whoever had the ability to obtain it. Today, Jun Patriarch wanted to tell the world. Not only did my sect discover the spirit stone lode first, but we also have the ability to obtain it. Anyone who touches it will have to pay a painful price. Shwa! Shwa! Around the valley, array flags were inserted one after another. When the layers of thunder array were set up, the smile on Zhen Dejuan's face gradually turned sinister. His two greatest pleasures were eating Lu Wancher's cooking and using array formations to perform the art of explosion. After comprehending the 32 formations, Zhen Dejuan's understanding of array formations had reached a new high, and the thunder array he created was even more powerful. If it exploded, it would definitely be as exciting as eating roasted gluten. Come, come. Zhen Dejuan covered his face and laughed strangely, hurry up and come. At the highest point of the valley, Xiao Ziji was wiping the muzzle of the field cannon, and in a short while, it was shiny. He did not cultivate the way of the sword or the way of the blade. However, under the guidance of the Patriarch, he had already fallen in love with this kind of powerful thermal weapon. Although Li Qingyang and Yi Xingqin had been using system items to become stronger, they were still considered normal people from another world in terms of martial arts. Xiao Ziji was definitely a combination of Earth's civilization and martial arts from another world. Jun Changshao sat on a rock, looked at the flowing light that was constantly gathering in the sky, and said, sinful self, change the cannonball to the highest level of crystal core. The spirit stone lode was a resource that had to be competed for in the Starfall continent. When the time came, there would definitely be a lot of sects coming. He wanted to shock the crowd with one shot, so that they would know when to advance and retreat, and know when to give up. Yes. Xiao Ziji withdrew the power of the crystal core that had gathered in the field cannon, and then took out dozens of crystal cores that were comparable to peak martial kings. Bring out the rocket launchers as well. Jun Changshao said, if he dares to leap over the lightning pool, we'll blast him down immediately. Shua. With a wave of his hand, Xiao Ziji summoned the god-modified RPG rocket launcher and began to charge it with crystal cores. He gradually realized that although his disciple's realm was not high, her aura was very strong. Especially in terms of body molding, she was not inferior to beasts of the same level. It was very strange and very strange. So, he decided to compromise and stay in the Eternal Sect for now, so that he could investigate the situation. Stupid human, remember, I'm not doing this for the food. Hoo. Fluorescent lights constantly rose in the valley and then gradually gathered in the sky, allowing the martial artists in the distant areas to see clearly. The sign of spirit energy recovery. A spirit stone mine is about to be unearthed. Let's go, let's go. In an instant, all the forces in the various provinces and counties who saw the natural phenomenon gathered their forces and rushed over. There were not only 3rd and 4th-rate sects, but also 7th and 8th-rate sections. Of course. The 7th and 8th-rate sects were purely here to watch the show, hoping to accidentally pick up a small bargain. Shush! 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 Streams of light flew out from the luminous holy sect, which was even farther away, toward the place where spirit energy was recovering. The middle-aged man who was knocked down by Jun Changshao had already used a secret method to inform the sect when he was thrown away. That was why they moved so quickly. Sangshan Sect. Ma Yunteng, Wang Donglin, and the others also set off. Miaohua Palace. Zhang Sun Fanghua, Leng Xingyue, and the other elders also went down the mountain one after another. The sects in the other provinces and counties also sent martial artists to rush over as fast as they could. The dazzling light flashing in the sky above the valley seemed to contain infinite magic, causing all the forces to rush over without hesitation. This fire. Looking at the brilliant light in the sky, Jun Changshao murmured, it's attracting all the moths. As if realizing that they were about to face all the forces, the disciples of the sect of all times became excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Shush! Shush! 2 hours later, more than 10 emperor-level experts of the luminous holy sect flew over, but they all stopped when they were about to approach the valley. That was because there were layers of arrays in front of them that were visible to the naked eye and emitting a violent thunder aura. Setting up the array in such an open and above-board manner was also very arrogant. Wu Huang, the leader of the peak-level experts, said in a deep voice, a thunder array. The others' expressions changed slightly. They immediately smelled danger from the arrays set up around the valley. Everyone. Jun Changshao, who was sitting on a boulder, picked up a loudspeaker and said, this place has been occupied by the sect of all times. No one is allowed to pass, or else they will have to bear the consequences. Sect of all times? Wu Huang, the leader of the peak-level experts, frowned. At this moment, the middle-aged man's weak voice sounded in his ears. After hearing that, the leader of the experts said angrily, Jun Patriarch, you have to give us an explanation for injuring the elders of the luminous holy sect, right? Jun Changshao said with the loudspeaker, I don't like him. Are you satisfied with this explanation? Chapter 752. Seeing that he was unhappy, was this explanation satisfactory? From the anger in the eyes of the experts of the Haoguang sacred sect, it was obvious that they were not satisfied. Jun Changshao. An elder said angrily, do you really think that just because you defeated 2 first-rate sects in the dragon and tiger battle for hegemony, you can run amok in the falling star continent? Cut the crap. Jun Changshao said impatiently, my sect of all times has taken a fancy to the spirit stone vein. If you want it, then come and snatch it. Simple, direct. Life and death were indifferent, if they were not convinced, then they would do it. However, the dozen or so emperor stage rankers of the Haoguang sacred sect did not dare to rush over. After all, there were too many lightning arrays set up. The strength of a formation master was reflected here. I can't beat you in a fight, but don't let me set up the array, or else I'll fight 10 of you. This was nothing. The one that really brought about the fatal blow was the cannon. Xiao Ziji had already placed the rocket launcher on his shoulder and stepped on the field cannon rack with one foot. As long as someone dared to cross the lightning pool, they would definitely fire at the first moment. Shwa! Shwa! In the distance, several more streams of light flew over and hovered near the lightning array. A total of 4 people came. They wore gold-rimmed clothes and had the word, World Pride, written on their chests. World-defying sacred sect. Jun Changshao grinned and said, it's quite fate. Jun Changshao. The elder in the lead of the world-defying sacred sect glanced at the lightning array that was set up in the valley and said solemnly, what do you mean by this? Although the dragon and tiger battle for hegemony had always emphasized that the competition was second and friendship was first, Eo Wushuang was still lying in bed after being tortured by Yixingchen. Now that he had met the patriarch of the sect of all times and his disciple in the land of spiritual energy recovery, the fire of dry wood could be ignited at the slightest touch. Jun Changshao said indifferently, this valley has already been occupied by my sect of all times, you can go back how you came. Arrogant. The world-defying sacred sect elder said angrily. Elder Yi. Wu Huang, the leader of the Radiant Light Holy Sect, said indifferently, treasures of heaven and earth are ownerless in the first place. What qualifications does the sect of all times have to possess them? He's the champion of Longhu battle for hegemony. Does he really think he's some big shot? Wu Huang said disdainfully. It was undeniable that the sect of all times was able to become the champion and set many records, but they were still not taken seriously by the first and second-rate sections. This was because the sect of all times could completely suppress them in terms of overall strength and foundation. Jun Changshao also understood. Therefore, he needed to increase his strength and increase his foundation. This spirit stone vein was about to be unearthed. No matter what, they had to take it. I'll fight with whoever tries to snatch it from me. Elder Yi of world-defying sacred sect coldly said, Jun Patriarch, this sign of spiritual power recovery will attract all the sects, your sect of all times wants to monopolize, my world-defying sacred sect agrees, they may not agree. He was not stupid. He could hear that the Radiant Light Holy Sect was deliberately instigating him to escalate the conflict with the sect of all times. Therefore, he had always restrained his emotions and did not bring anyone to rush forward. Whoever disagrees can come forward. Jun Changshao said. The thunder array and cannons were already in place. The evil saint of 5 treasures and the supreme elder of the extreme cold palace stood on both sides. Not to mention, it was only Wu Huang who came. Even if the martial emperor came, I would immediately slip away without bringing my disciples. The previous sect leader's surname was written backwards. Elder Ye's face gradually darkened, but he suppressed his anger and did not rush over. The Radiant Light Holy Sect was anxious. The leader Wu Huang said, Elder Yi, is your young patriarch okay? Damn it! Can you not be so obvious? Or could it be that our world-defying sacred sect cultivates the Ao Tianju? Is it the kind of person who is instigated to fight in the front line with a stupid face? Shwa! Shwa! More Emperor stage rankers flew over from all over the world. Seeing the experts of the Radiant Light Holy Sect and the world-defying sacred sect outside the valley, they hurriedly stopped the carriage. It can't be. The recovery of spiritual energy in such a remote place actually attracted the first and second-rate sects. When they learned that the sect of all times had occupied the valley and set up many thunder arrays, anger immediately rose in their hearts. It wasn't that the falling star continent didn't have any spirit stone mines. According to the rules of the martial arts world, everyone rushed over. No matter who discovered it first, no matter if they robbed it or not, they had to first calmly discuss it. This kind of action of sealing off the area and not letting others in, simply Did they think of themselves as a first-rate sect? The most ridiculous thing was, a fifth-rate sect was still blocking a first-rate sect outside. How could he be so capable? Why didn't he go to the heavens? The experts of the various sects who came to the valley one after another had a lot of opinions about Jun Changshao, but no one dared to cross the line. They could only use their eyes and words to strongly condemn him. 2 hours later, there were already dozens of sects gathered outside the Thunder Array, and thousands of martial artists. Ma Yunteng, Wang Donglin, and the others also rushed over. When they learned that the sect of all times had occupied the valley and was confronting so many first-rate, second-rate, third-rate, and third-rate sects, the corners of their mouths twitched violently. Jun Patriarch. You're really tough. Shangguan Fanghua stood in the distance and said speechlessly, is this guy crazy? The recovery of spiritual energy this time has alarmed many first-rate and second-rate sections. He has occupied the valley, which is equivalent to becoming an enemy of all the sects, Leng Xingyue said. Although she said that, her spiritual senses were still spreading in the valley, looking for the man's figure. However, she couldn't find him, and a hint of disappointment rose in her eyes. Who should I look for? Wei Qingfeng. Unfortunately, in this situation, Elder Wei, who was in charge of medicinal materials, wouldn't come over, and there was no need for him because Jun Changshao and the disciples could handle it. The sect of all times now had the ability to compete with the world. Jun Changshao saw Ma Yunteng and the others, but he didn't let them in because he was now confronting dozens of sections. If he let them in, it was equivalent to dragging them into the water. Zhen Dejuan stood behind, feeling itchy in his heart. He could detonate the Thunder Array at any time, but the powerhouses of the various sects didn't move and could only wait anxiously. Of course. Zhen Dejuan also knew that this seemingly calm situation would be broken after the phenomenon disappeared and the spirit stone vein was unearthed. At that time, he could show off his explosive art to his heart's content. Time passed slowly, and more forces rushed over. The next day, the number of people had reached more than 100,000. The first echelon closest to the array formation was made up of first-rate and second-rate sects, the second echelon was made up of third-rate and fourth-rate sects, and the fifth-rate sects, and those sects were at the outermost periphery. They were completely there to watch the show. At this moment, the martial artists of the low-level sects were full of admiration for the sect of all times. How much courage did it take to occupy the place where spiritual energy had recovered and go against so many powerful sects? The light is weakening. Suddenly, someone shouted. The martial artists at the periphery of the valley raised their heads and saw the light gathering in the sky begin to disperse and disappear. At the same time, they could feel a faint tremor. Whoosh whoosh, after a while, the ground inside the valley cracked open, and pure heaven and earth attributes filled the air. This meant that this place had officially entered the stage of spiritual energy recovery. According to experience, as long as they dug deep along the location where the spiritual energy was emitted, they would definitely be able to find the spirit stone vein. The phenomenon of heaven and earth weakened, and when the pure heaven and earth attributes emerged in the valley, the powerhouses outside became restless. Everyone. The leader of the Bright Light Sacred Sect, Wu Huang, shouted, the spirit stone vein is in the valley, follow this old man to break the Thunder Array. Unable to instigate the world-defying sacred sect, he finally couldn't help but want to force his way out. After all, the sect was in urgent need of spirit stones recently and needed new veins to replenish. This guy was also very smart. If he wanted to go, he would have to drag the other sects along. Elder Yi of the world-defying sacred sect was calmer and thought, whoever wants to go, my world-defying sacred sect will never go. The others also thought so, but they were still afraid of the Thunder Array. Sigh. Their hearts were not united. If they were to risk their lives and rush up together, they would definitely be able to abuse Jun Gosheng. After the Bright Light Sacred Sect elder shouted, no one responded. A gust of wind blew over, and it suddenly seemed quite lonely and awkward. A bunch of cowards. He cursed in his heart, then turned into a stream of light and flew high into the sky, obviously to cross the thunder array. For safety's sake, he turned his palm. Xiao. Xiao. A prop similar to the 5 elements 8 trigrams appeared out of thin air and gathered layers of defensive enchantments in front of him. 5 elements heaven and earth cover. This is infinitely close to the sacred rank. Peng, just as everyone was discussing, a deafening roar suddenly came from the valley. They only saw a stream of light exploding out, and then it accurately hit the bright light sacred sect elder, producing thick white smoke that covered the sky. Ga. The audience was silent. Xiao. After a while, the bright light sacred sect elder fell from the smoke. Ka. Xiao Ziji, who was standing at a high point, put down the rocket launcher, continued to charge the shell with crystal core, and transmitted, Patriarch, the target has been shot down. Chapter 753. Plop. Like a kite with its string cut, the elder of the Radiant Light Sacred Sect wobbled and fell into the mountain forest outside the lightning formation. The 5 elements universe cover he summoned also fell and shattered into pieces after falling to the ground. Outside the thunder array, it became quiet. All the martial artists widened their eyes and even subconsciously rubbed their eyes to make sure they didn't see wrongly. They didn't see wrongly. The peak stage Wu Huang was indeed blasted down. He was bruised all over and fainted on the spot. His ultimate treasure, which was infinitely close to the holy grade, was also shattered. The martial artists who were shocked by the ultimate treasure now had wonderful expressions on their faces. The most tragic thing in the world was that passers-by like them were trying hard to show off their shock, but before the atmosphere could be set, the performer had already finished his curtain call. The emperor's presence suddenly felt a chill down their spines. They were sure that the luminous light holy sect elder must have been blasted by the flowing light. What on earth was that thing? It could ignore the ultimate treasure and the realm and blast a peak stage Wu Huang into such a miserable state. Elder He. Several martial artists of the luminous light holy sect flew over and lifted He Chunching up. Although he was injured and unconscious, it wasn't a big deal. Fortunately, he had cautiously activated his defensive ultimate treasure. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to withstand the bombardment of the rocket launcher. At the very least, he would have been seriously injured. Sigh. The Purple King shook its head. It sympathized with the luminous light holy sect elder very much because it had not only experienced the feeling of being blasted personally, but also experienced it every day for a period of time. This is the fate of those who cross the thunder pool without permission. Jun Changxiao's voice came out. Although it was very calm, it was intimidating. The martial artists of the various sects who didn't want to rush over all stood still obediently after seeing the luminous light holy sect elder being blasted down. Although they desperately wanted to enter the valley and find the spirit stone vein, the huge noise just now calmed their restless blood. Calm down. They must calm down. This is very comfortable. Seeing that no one dared to approach, Jun Changxiao smiled. He didn't want to be enemies with the whole world. He just wanted to occupy the spirit stone vein and develop his sect. If the various sects could retreat, it would be a happy ending. Who? In the valley, the ground was still cracking, and gradually, the most natural spirit chi recovery array was formed. Jun Patriarch recalled the time when he was at Mount Iron Bone. In order to not be discovered by outsiders, he had to manipulate the isolation array formation to last for 7 days. But today, the sect of all times has occupied the valley, and you don't dare to take a step forward. Why should you share the oars? You big sects have 2 mouths, one open and the other closed. Is everything reasonable? Old man. Jun Changxiao pointed at Elder Yi and said coldly, I'll say it here today. Anyone who dares to take half a step forward will have to pay a painful price. Too arrogant. An emperor expert said loudly, everyone, this is just a fifth-rate sect. Can't we break the lightning array and take care of it if we work together? That's right. Someone supported. The sect of all time's disciples were digging deeper and deeper, and the ore vein would appear soon. At this time, the martial artists of the first-rate and second-rate sects couldn't suppress the urge to rush over. He Chunsheng was still too impatient. If he could hold it in until now, he could easily pull everyone into an uprising. Elder Yi said in a deep voice, Jun Changshao, your sect of all times wants to monopolize the spirit stone mine. We won't agree. If you insist on being stubborn, you have to be prepared to pay a painful price. Huff huff. As he spoke, his cultivation base burst out. The 3 Wu Huang experts who came with him also released their realms. The martial artists of the Radiant Light Holy Sect and the other high-level sects also released their full cultivation base. For a time, the space outside the lightning array gathered a terrifying spiritual energy field. Everyone! Elder Yi shouted angrily, charge over with me. Huff huff. Explosive spiritual energy was released again. Jun Changshao lowered his head and rubbed his fingers. Flames rose and lit the cigar hanging in his mouth. He took a deep breath and said, fire. Bang, a deafening explosion rang out. Boom. A mushroom cloud rose in the area outside the lightning array, and the entire ground shook violently. The martial artists of the outermost sect were shocked. They covered their buzzing ears and retreated frantically. Soon, the clouds dissipated. Looking down from the sky, the originally empty forest had been blown into a giant pit. Even the edge of the forest was barren. Elder Yi and the others who were ready to charge opened their eyes wide and their ears perked up. Huff. Jun Changshao blew a smoke ring and said, come if you're not afraid of death. Jun Patriarch. An emperor stage expert suppressed the shock in his heart and cupped his hands. Sorry for the disturbance. Goodbye. 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 Many emperor stage experts of the second and third-rate sects left faster than when they came. Gulp. Elder Yi swallowed and hurriedly left with his 3 companions. Before he left, he glanced at the deep pit not far away. The shock in his heart was even more intense. Although the cannon had intentionally missed its target, it had still intimidated the crowd. The sects who had the idea and impulse all fled. The spirit stone mine was important, but their lives were more important. Besides, with the destructive power just now, if it had hit the crowd, it would have killed a lot of them. Patriarch. The mine has been dug out. Take it all away. Don't leave a single one behind. Yes. Patriarch, this mine is a little big. I'm afraid it won't be finished in 1 or 2 days. Inform the sects to send more disciples to help. Yes. The martial artists who had no interest in the spirit stone mine heard the conversation between Jun Changshao and the disciples in the valley, and their eyes were filled with envy. Chapter 754. Once the field cannon was fired, the experts of the various sects who had their own ideas were all scared away. The main thing was that those who came were all at the emperor level. That kind of explosive power and lethality were too great, so they didn't have the guts to fight head-on. Without any hindrance, Jun Changshao mobilized more disciples to start mining. Batches of natural spirit stones were transported out and stored in his interspatial ring. The low-level sects and martial artists standing at the periphery could only watch helplessly. The first-rate sects had already suffered a loss, so why were they still here? Did they really think that they could be lucky enough to pick up a bargain? For someone like Jun Changshao who entered Death Valley, he had to ask for money from the rogue cultivators. How could he leave a little thing for others to pick up? In fact, they weren't waiting to pick up the leftovers, but waiting to see how the large sects would take their next step. Especially the Bright Light Holy Sect. Their own elder had been blasted unconscious. Not to mention the spirit stone vein, it was extremely difficult for them to swallow this anger. There was also the second-rate world-defying holy sect. How could they watch a spirit stone vein be dug up by the fifth-rate sect of all times? Just wait. There would definitely be a good show to watch. Perhaps, it won't be long before an emperor-level expert appears. At that time, would the sect of all times obediently admit defeat or fight head-on? Jun Changshao also knew that the few large sects would not let this matter rest, so he ordered his disciples to hurry up and dig out the spirit stones. For this reason, he didn't hesitate to order Xiao Maxian to transform into the Black Eagle form of the Demon Ridge and go to the sect to call for the Lanxiang excavator specialist Peppa the Wild Boar. Hurry up and go down. Jun Changshao held the green dragon crescent blade in his hand, and a terrifying aura surrounded his body, as if he had turned into a demon god. Coo. Peppa the Wild Boar drilled into the mine at the speed of reincarnation and dug out the spirit stones with the disciples. To be exact, it was the one digging. Everyone was watching. Because after this guy released the earth element psionic energy, it quickly decomposed the soil and minerals, and the spirit stones flew out one by one. The speed was so fast that the disciples couldn't get involved at all. Oh my god! Li Fei said with his eyes wide open, this digging is too fast. It was more than fast. It was super fast. In just an hour, the amount of natural spirit stones dug out was enough for several thousand disciples to dig out for an entire day. Those disciples who cultivated the five elements heavenly reflection mantra and comprehended the earth elemental attribute were extremely embarrassed because they had tried to dig as well, but their digging speed was completely incomparable to Peppa Wild Boar's. The attributes that humans condense through acquired or martial arts could not be compared to the attributes of beasts that they were born with. Unfortunately, after becoming Jun Changxiao's contracted beast, Peppa Wild Boar's attributes were stimulated to the extreme, but its main function was to plow and build. Now, it had unlocked a new skill mining. Schwa. 2 hours later, Peppa the Wild Boar had dug out 200,000 natural spirit stones. At this rate, they would be able to obtain millions of natural spirit stones after digging for a day and a night. Awesome! Jun Changxiao's eyes blazed. This was a resource that could help his disciples improve their strength faster. Not to mention a few million, even if it was a few 100 billion, he wouldn't think it was too little. At this moment, Jun Changxiao's eyes looked into the distance. 3 streams of light were rapidly approaching from a few 100 miles away. Under the eruption of their heavy aura, even the space was violently shaking. Half-step Wusheng. The evil saint of 5 ultimates said. The supreme elder of the extreme coldness palace had a solemn expression. Judging from the heavy aura of these 3 half-step Wusheng, they were definitely stronger than him. In fact, the supreme elder of the extreme coldness palace was able to break through to the half-step Wusheng because of his own hard work and talent. However, the key was still luck. This was because in the entire continent, there were very few martial artists who could reach this level. Because it was a coincidental breakthrough, his strength couldn't be compared with the half-step Wusheng of the first-rate and second-rate sections. As expected, they still haven't given up. Jun Changshao shook his head and said. He could guess that these 3 half-step Wusheng must be related to the luminous light sacred sect and the world-defying sacred sect. This is a little troublesome. Zhen Dejuan frowned slightly. With his current thunder array, he could only blow up the emperor level and half-step Wusheng, unless the other party merged into the central area. However, any expert with a bit of brain wouldn't rush in. Moreover, with their strength, even if they couldn't directly break the array, they could still directly fly over. Be on guard. Jun Changshao said coldly. Who? Little Long Long, who was lying on the stone, stood up. Its eyes were filled with a strong fighting spirit. Its smooth skin became increasingly red, and one could vaguely see an additional scale on its neck. Xiao Maxian stood in front of its master, waving its hands. The psychic cat flew around like a ball, and a circle of small stars suddenly appeared on top of its head. However, it was also painful and happy. The two contracted beasts had already entered battle mode. Xiao Ziji, who was standing on top of the mountain, stepped on the field artillery with one foot and carried the rocket launcher on his shoulder. Jun Changshao said, "Activate the special effect mode." Yes. Xiao Ziji's spiritual sense entered the rocket launcher and established some kind of connection with it. Xiao. Xiao. 3 spots of light instantly appeared in the scope. The crosshair constantly shook and frequently changed targets, as if waiting for the user to lock onto it. Only Jun Changshao could activate the self-aiming and X-ray function of the modified 8X scope. However, any disciple of the Sect of all times could activate the special effect of the godly modified rocket launcher. The key point. Sect of all times disciple. Half-step Wusheng had already grasped the power of space. His perception was very strong. Just relying on the rocket launcher might not be able to hit him. It was still necessary to activate the precise strike special effect. Whoosh whoosh around the valley, a strong pressure spread out, causing the low-level sects and martial artists who had yet to leave to change their expressions. Xiao! 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 Suddenly, the space outside the thunder array shook. 3 old men with imposing auras seemed to appear out of thin air. 2 of them were wearing the same clothes, and one of them was wearing a gray robe. "They're here, they're here." From their clothes, the martial artists immediately realized that these were definitely experts of the luminous light holy sect and the world-defying holy sect. From the oppressive aura that pervaded the air, their strength was definitely above the emperor stage. Then, they were half-step Wusheng. Oh my god! This kind of expert belonged to the quasi-top level in the falling star continent, and there were actually 3 of them. They still came. The corner of Ma Yunting's mouth twitched. Wang Donglin said solemnly, "Although Jun Patriarch has a powerful ability to increase his cultivation, a first-rate and second-rate sect's half-step Wusheng is definitely not comparable to a fourth-rate sect." Zhang Sun Fanghua shook her head and said, "At that time, we adopted the world-defying holy sect's elder's suggestion to give them tens of thousands of spirit stones. How could it alarm 3 half-step Wusheng?" Jun Changshao. At this moment, a half-step Wusheng of the luminous light holy sect said in a deep voice, "You're quite bold to injure my sect's elder." The pressure from his words shook the thunder array in the valley violently. Zhen Dejuan suddenly frowned. The half-step Wusheng of a large sect was really amazing. The power that came with his words could shake the array that he had arranged. If they were to fight, it would be very difficult to detonate it. Cut the crap. Standing on the boulder, Jun Changshao stretched out his hand and hooked his index finger. "Come at me." Chapter 755. The scale of the newly unearthed lode was not small, and there were a lot of spirit stones stored inside. If all of them were dug out, it would definitely be a huge fortune for the sect of all times, and their overall strength would definitely increase by a lot. Therefore, even if the Haoguang sacred sect sent 2 half-step Wusheng and the world-defying sacred sect sent 1 half-step Wusheng, Jun Changshao would never back down. He had to fight them to the end. Riches and honor were found in danger. If he did not succeed, he would die. Jun Changshao learned from the vice-sect leader of the Shutter Gate, combining the one yang finger and the lion roar technique into one move. He hooked his finger and said, "Bring it on." Everyone's mouth twitched. In the dragon and tiger battle for hegemony, they had seen Jun Changshao's thick skin, but today they had also seen his thick courage. Those were 3 genuine half-step Wusheng, daring to use such a cheap and provocative tone. In the entire falling star continent, they might not be able to find a second person. Jun Changshao would not underestimate the experts of the two first and second-rate sects, but since things had reached this point, he definitely could not weaken the momentum. In short, regardless of whether he could beat them or not, he would first act tough. Next, whether he squatted down and took a beating or ran away, he would do as he pleased. Moreover, isn't it just 3 half-step wusheng? Although my sect of all times only has one, I have 2 contract beasts, the 5 ultimate evil saint, a rocket launcher, and myself, a 7th grade sword and martial double emperor. If we really fight, we still have the qualifications to wrestle. This kid is really arrogant. The expert from the world-defying sacred sect said coldly. Humph. An expert from the Haoguang sacred sect said disdainfully, young people nowadays have a little fame in the Jianghu, and they don't know what their surname is. The half-step wusheng who spoke earlier glanced at the thunder array in front of him and said indifferently, do you really think you can be fearless by putting this kind of thing around? I'll break it. The expert next to him took a step forward in the void, and his body instantly filled with a powerful semisage pressure, which immediately pressed down like a tide. Wang! Wang! As the overwhelming pressure spread out, the lightning array that existed around the valley was suddenly squeezed, and the barrier began to distort. Zhen Dijuan had been trying to stabilize the lightning array, but he was still unable to contend against the boundless power. Beads of sweat gradually appeared on his forehead, and his entire face was distorted. Boom! 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 In the end, it was difficult to stabilize, and all the lightning arrays that had been set up around the valley exploded. Streaks of lightning splattered out and stirred up clouds of dust. The martial artists standing in the distance all widened their eyes. They knew that there was a lightning array in front of them, and they also knew that they would definitely be blown up if they went in. However, they didn't expect that the explosion from the perspective of a bystander would have such a strong visual impact. Pooh! Zhen Dijuan spat out a mouthful of blood as he clutched his chest and took a few steps back. His complexion became extremely weak. Although the explosion of the array formation displayed its artistic side, it did not directly detonate, nor did it hurt the target. Instead, it was squeezed until it exploded, which made him very unhappy and unwilling to accept it. Damn it! Just you wait. Once he had thoroughly studied the Chiman 32 formations, he would definitely create an even more advanced thunder formation and blast away all of you high and mighty half-step wusheng. The dust was blown away by the wind, forming a fist-deep crater in the periphery of the valley. The inside of the crater could be seen clearly with the naked eye. Jun Changshao stood on a huge rock. Some disciples of the sect of all times took out their weapons and guarded the entrance. The most eye-catching thing was the field artillery placed on the high ground and the rocket launcher on Xiao Ziji's shoulder. The smart martial artists immediately thought that the bright light holy sect's elder and the huge crater must have been caused by these 2 items. To be able to severely injure Wu Huang at his peak and explode with such great destructive power, they must be at least saint-grade ultimate treasures. Jun Changshao. The half-step wusheng who had broken the lightning array said lightly, seeing that your sect has not risen easily in such a short period of time, the bright light holy sect will not pursue the previous grievances if you hand over the 2 items and the spirit stone mine on the mountain. When he came, he had already heard from the awakened He Chunsheng that he had been hit by the strange big guy on the high ground. Therefore, he was sure that the item was definitely extraordinary. It would be good if he could obtain it. Ha! Jun Changshao interlocked his fingers and said, spirit stones are no longer enough to satisfy your first-class sect. Are you ready to rob others? You don't want to hand it over? Cut the crap. Bring it on. Not to mention that he was not riding a horse, the half-step wusheng could not tolerate his tone. Whoosh! He flew over and stopped in the explosion area of the lightning array. He raised his hand and said, you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Huff huff, a vast amount of spiritual energy instantly gathered in his palm and formed a cyclone. The spiritual energy in the surroundings was also driven and turned into streams of light that surged over. At that moment, with the valley as the center, a murderous aura was emitted from dozens of miles away. Many martial artists who were watching the show became nervous. The fight has begun. That's a half-step wusheng. The power he unleashes must be earth-shattering. Although everyone was scared and wanted to retreat, the desire to see a battle between experts drove them to stay where they were and ignore the possibility of being affected. Are you handing it over or not? The half-step wusheng asked again. After all, they were a major sect and there were so many spectators watching. Bullying a fifth-rate sect was too degrading. If they could make the other party admit their mistake and hand over the treasure, they could gain a reputation of being magnanimous. Ding! Side mission triggered. A mission at this time, could it be? Sure enough, when he opened the system interface, the mission was, host must personally defeat a half-step wusheng 01, elite mission. What the fuck? Jun Changshao was on the verge of breaking down. It was a bit difficult for him to defeat a half-step wusheng. Moreover, the appearance of the mission meant that he had to change from passive defense to active attack. This way, the situation was different. Hand it over, my ass. Jun Changshao stood up and unfolded his wings. He clenched his right fist. Hum. Hum. A stream of light instantly lingered around his body and then gradually condensed into an iron armor. The whole process was as if he was wearing a holy garment. Huff huff. Spiritual energy spread out from his body and covered the iron armor. It was as if he was wearing another layer of armor on the surface. Bang! The green dragon crescent blade appeared out of thin air and smashed the bottom of the blade on the stone surface. The mechanical wings flying, combat, and defense modes were all activated. Together with the enhancement of the spirit armor, he also took out the god-modified weapon. At this moment, Jun Patriarch was really going all out in order to complete the side mission. Huh! The half-step wusheng were surprised. This eternal sect sovereign, whether it was the armor he wore or the weapon in his hand, even a casual glance would tell that they were not simple. His entire body was definitely a treasure. Of course. With the system in his hands, Jun Patriarch was a gamer. Although the three half-step wusheng standing opposite him were strong, they did not even have the first charge. At best, they were just gamers. Since you don't want to hand it over, don't blame me for bullying you in public. The powerhouse who was ready to attack shouted coldly. Huff! In an instant, the cyclone gathered in his palms suddenly rippled with energy. A beam of light burst out from it and blasted toward the fully armed Jun Changshao. This move gathered his own strength and the power of heaven and earth. It seemed to have the power to penetrate space and deeply shock the spectators in the distance. Mountain splitting. Jun Changshao raised the green dragon crescent blade and slashed toward the beam of light. With the enhancement of the combat transformation on his right hand, a dazzling and extremely thick blade aura was dragged out. Whoosh! The blade aura that seemed to be able to pierce through 19 continents collided with the beam of light and tore it apart. Swoosh! Jun Changshao held the blade and tore the beam of light like a piece of cloth. With the enhancement of the mechanical wings, he rushed toward the half-step wusheng in an instant. Not good. Ding! At this moment, the crisp sound of weapons colliding was heard. The powerful force directly shattered the space in that area. Whoosh 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 whoosh. A half-broken sword flew out and stabbed into a giant rock in the distance. Under the sunlight, the word fan could be seen engraved on the edge of the broken part. This is a sword made by Master Fan. Everyone looked up and saw that the half-step wusheng had retreated dozens of feet. The sword in his hand was broken in half. Chapter 756. Even though Master Fan had never appeared before, the weapons he forged were very popular. The broken sword in the hand of the half-step Wusheng from the Bright Light Holy Sect was once forged by him. In terms of quality, it had already reached the sacred level. However, before the name was even given, and before the extras had the chance to shock the atmosphere, the curtain call had already been completed. My sword. The half-step Wusheng held the famous sword that he had spent a lot of effort and money to obtain. His hands could not help but tremble, and his eyes were filled with sadness and indignation. The sword forged by Master Fan not only represented excellence, but also elegance. If the upper class could get one, even if their level was not high, it was enough to show off in front of people for a lifetime. A sacred level sword was even more precious to collectors and users. How could they accept the fact that it was broken? Not to mention whether Master Fan was still alive or not, just the fact that the weapon he forged was destroyed by Jun Changshao again and again to create an atmosphere for him to show off, it was a tragedy that only the weapon was seen but not the person. You destroyed my sword. The half-step Wusheng raised his head, and his eyes flashed with monstrous anger. Unforgivable. Whoosh whoosh, in an instant, a strong aura emerged from his body and pressed down on Jun Changshao. Obviously, he wanted to use his huge advantage in realm to forcefully bind him. In a battle between a high realm and a low realm, this was undoubtedly the simplest and most direct way. However, even the pressure of the upper realm's palm print could not penetrate Go Sheng. How could a half-step Wusheng do it? Shua. He held the green dragon crescent blade and rushed up against the aura. His armed right arm suddenly shone brightly, and endless power poured into the blade, causing the blade engraved with a green dragon to suddenly burst out with a momentum that could shatter space. Ka ka ka, he went forward, lightning and sparks all the way. Jun Changshao at full power was absolutely terrifying. Whoosh, at this moment, the entire blade emitted a green light and condensed into a long-bearded green shadow. It said in a loud voice, I am Guan Yunchang, the Marquis of Hans Ho Ting. This voice revealed a righteous momentum, shocking the hearts of the distant audience. Some warriors who came together even had the impulse to kneel down and swear brotherhood with their friends under the witness of the green shadow. Phantom Soul. The two half-step Wusheng were astonished. Swish, at this moment, Jun Changshao rushed over with the support of Wusheng's soul. He stood above the expert and furiously slashed down with his saber. Saber chi traverses 30,000 miles, one saber light chills 19 continents. Who? The heavy cyan saber chi slashed down from above, tearing the space apart. The entire world seemed to have lost its color in an instant. It was as if everything had turned silent, and only young Master Jun's saber remained. Ka ka ka, space shattered, leaving behind a saber mark. The eyes of the half-step Wusheng, who was hanging below, were filled with astonishment. How could this guy ignore his chi domain? How could he explode with such power? There was no time for him to think. He suddenly raised his palms to the sky, and dense spiritual energy burst out, instantly forming a solid defensive barrier in the sky. Boom! With a loud bang, the cyan blade slashed the barrier. An extremely strong destructive force instantly penetrated the barrier, causing it to shatter on the spot. Swish! The half-step Wusheng retreated quickly. Boom! The remaining power of the saber chi slammed directly on the ground, and the half-step Wusheng broke out in cold sweat. With the power just now, if he couldn't dodge it in time, he would definitely be injured directly, or even cut in half. A young man at the martial emperor realm could actually make him, a half-step martial saint, feel a sense of crisis. Then, his weapons and equipment were too awesome. Swish! Jun Changshao took the green dragon crescent blade and stimulated Wusheng's soul to attack again. At this moment, he had obviously suppressed his opponent in terms of momentum. He definitely wouldn't give his opponent a chance to breathe. Boom! Boom! The two instantly launched a fierce battle in the sky that lasted for tens of thousands of words. About 10 minutes later, Jun Changshao slashed his saber again. Although the half-step Wusheng dodged it with difficulty, there was still a saber mark on his arm, and blood spurted out. If one looked carefully, there were more than 10 saber marks on his body. It was obvious that he had been slashed a lot during the battle. Huff! Huff! The half-step Wusheng's breathing was slightly hurried. He roared in his heart, why is he still so energetic? This young man was wearing a full set of top-tier equipment. After a long battle, his physical strength would become weaker and weaker. However, after fighting for more than 10 minutes, he had tried his best to dodge the saber chi and had been slashed so many times. It was obvious that he was in a sorry state. However, the more he fought, the stronger his opponent became. Dual core drive allowed a man to last longer. Swish! Jun Changshao rushed over again. This time, he gathered his strength on the green dragon crescent blade and slashed out a saber chi that tore the space apart. The power was even stronger than before. The half-step Wusheng didn't dare to take the attack head-on. He could only retreat again until he was side by side with his two companions. He panted and said, if you don't go, all the spiritual stones in the mine will be dug out. He was scared. He didn't dare to continue fighting. Ding! Side mission completed. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 10,000 contribution points. Ding! Contribution points, 300,015,0000. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the side mission. Mission reward, New Seal Talisman X1, Purchase Right of Heavenly Treasure Incubator X1. Jun Changshao, who was about to attack, suddenly stopped after hearing the notification. He said with a stunned face, it's done. The system said, that guy was beaten and ran away. He even instigated his companions to attack. The system determined that you have defeated him. I see. Jun Changshao suddenly understood. His face was filled with ecstasy. The side mission was rewarded with a new seal talisman. Wouldn't he be able to activate the modified hard-to-keep saber? The saber given by the first wish had been modified for some time. However, because the old one couldn't be unsealed, he had never used it. So, he didn't know how powerful it was. Swish! Jun Changshao returned to the huge rock in the valley. Holding the green dragon crescent blade in front of him, he said coldly, if you can't win, you let your companions come. Is this the style of a second-rate sect? With the new seal talisman, he was able to straighten his back even more. Swish! Swish! The two experts of the Haoguang Sacred Sect and the world-defying Sacred Sect ignored him and flew towards the valley. Just now, the half-step Wusheng reminded the two of them and decided to take down the spirit stone vein first. Fight! Jun Changshao shouted. Xiao Ziji, who had already activated the special effects, controlled the aiming device, locked onto the world-defying Sacred Sect expert flying at the front, and decisively pulled the trigger. Bang! White smoke spewed out of the muzzle, and the cannonball exploded out of the air, still spinning as it rushed past. When the martial artists in the distance saw this, they were sure that the elder Wu Huang of the Haoguang Sacred Sect must have been blasted down by this thing. The locked half-step Wusheng caught the spatial fluctuations, and the corner of his mouth raised in disdain. Immediately, as if he had used a flash skill, he flashed to the top of the valley. Whoo! A vast amount of psionic energy erupted, and then crazily spread down. What he had to do now was to seal off the valley, not allowing the disciples of the sect of all times to enter, and not allowing them to leave. Be careful. At this moment, the expert of the Haoguang Sacred Sect behind him shouted. The half-step Wusheng's spiritual sense spread out and found that the flowing light in the distance had suddenly turned a corner in the area he had just passed through. Don't panic. No hurry. Watch me continue to cross the space. Xiao. The expert of the world-defying Sacred Sect calmly merged into the space, and then appeared in the position before the first flash, the corner of his mouth raised into a smile. Boom! Suddenly, an explosion came from that area, and thick smoke appeared, like the traces left behind by an oversized firework. Hoo! A gust of wind blew, and the white smoke dissipated. The expert of the world-defying sacred sect was suspended in mid-air, his entire body was blown up into an abnormally sorry state, and his bundled hair was scattered messily. The power of the god-modified bazooka could knock out a peak Wu Huang like He Chunsheng, but it couldn't shake the half-step Wu Sheng, so it only caused damage and didn't bring any substantial damage. However, it was shameful enough. After all, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he still couldn't dodge out and was hit. It was simply embarrassing and shameful. Shwa! Shwa! On the other side, the great elder of the extreme cold palace and the evil saint of 5 treasures had already flown out and were above the valley, blocking the other half-step Wusheng. The two sides slightly confirmed their gazes and instantly tangled together. In terms of strength, the great elder of the extreme cold palace couldn't fight against this kind of powerhouse, but with the assistance of the evil saint of 5 treasures, who used to be Wu Xing's cultivation, there was no pressure at all. Boom! Boom! The 3 of them fought fiercely in the air, and the space was shattered by the explosion of psionic energy. Shwa! Shwa! Zhen Dejuan frequently waved the array flag and inserted it into the valley. An isolation array from the strange Gate 32 formation quickly condensed, blocking the remaining power so as not to affect the spirit stone mine below. Little Dragon, Xiao Moxian. Jun Changshao pointed to the half-step sage who had been bombed, and said, "I'll leave this person to you too." Shwa! Little Dragon was the first to rush over. Hoo! Scorching flames spread out, and then an innocent young man's face appeared, saying, "I can do it myself." Pang! Xiao Moxian pressed the spiritual cat's face against a stone, fiercely rubbing against it. "Is he looking down on me? Big sister. I don't know if he's looking down on you or not, but what I do know is that you're trying to kill me." Shwa! The spiritual cat was flung away. A pair of wings appeared behind Xiao Moxian's back, and then she flew up at full speed. Bang! Little Dragon had already begun fighting with the half-step sage. He angrily shouted, "Woman, hurry up and get out of my way." "I won't." Xiao Moxian flew high up, her black wings wrapping around her. The space in front of her shook and shimmering feathers appeared out of thin air. She said, "Sky-filling feathers." Shwa! Her wings spread open, and the feathers shot out like arrows towards the half-step sage. Little Dragon, who had just exchanged a punch with the half-step sage, looked back, his face crumbling as he roared, "Pig teammate." Bang! 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 Numerous explosions rang out, and the space was torn apart, spreading in all directions. As the martial artists saw this, they sucked in a breath of cold air. A battle of this level was truly shocking. Bang! At this time, there was a loud explosion in the skies above the valley. Another half-step sage was sent flying away. He staggered to steady himself, his clothes torn apart and a black palm mark imprinted on his skin. Young man. Evil Saint 5 Ultimate's right hand emitted a black aura. His eyes were gloomy and cold as he said, "If this were in the past, this palm of mine would have left you in so much pain that you wished you were dead." The half-step sage of the Radiant Light Holy Sect used his spiritual energy to rapidly dissolve the evil energy that had seeped into his body. His expression was dignified as he said, "So you were an evil cultivator. Sky-filling feathers." At this time, on the other side, Xiao Moxian seemed to go berserk with anger. She gathered her wings together once more, and as they unfurled, a rain of feathers shot out. Little Dragon's lips twitched, but he had already dodged. He angrily said, "Woman, you're just a hindrance." Shwa! After the feather attack ended, the strongest flames gathered and shot towards the half-step sage. Bang! Bang! In the air, monstrous flames soared to the heavens. Fist seals and strength wildly crashed outwards. The half-step sage was first struck once and then struck twice by Xiao Maxian. Although his injuries weren't fatal, he couldn't avoid being affected. He was immediately entangled by Little Dragon. Of the two half-step sages, one was entangled by a contract beast and the other was entangled by the Extreme Coldness Palace's highest elder and Evil Saint 5 ultimates. As for the other one, he was naturally entangled by June Patriarch. One could only see him unleash his full power once more, grasping the blue dragon crescent blade as he rushed forwards. Bang! Bang! In the valley area, the three battlefields frequently displayed powerful battles. The distant audience didn't know which to watch. Xiao Ziji was also tangled up. This was because after reloading the cannonballs, he didn't know which target to aim at. Senior 5 ultimates had already gained the upper hand. Patriarch was also chasing his opponent from the east to the west. He could only continue attacking the half-step sages of the world-defying Holy Sect. Crack! Lock on! But Little Dragon was entangled with his opponent, he simply didn't have a chance to open fire. Sky-filling feathers. At this moment, Xiao Maxian once again used her killing move. Little Dragon heard the sound and without a word, he turned his head and roared, "Are you hitting him or hitting me?" "Of course I'm hitting him. Can't you find an opportunity to hit him? Why do you always bring me along? I'm happy, what do you care? I think you're itching for a beating." June Patriarch's two contract beasts stopped fighting the half-step sage and began to quarrel in the air. Good chance. Xiao Ziji seized the opportunity. Taking advantage of the fact that the half-step sage had just received the sky-filling feathers, he hurriedly pulled the trigger and fired a second shot. Boom! Gorgeous smoke appeared in the air once more. The half-step sage of the world-defying Holy Sect was once again bombarded. He became even more distressed, and even his hair was blown up. Alarmed by the sound of the cannon, Little Dragon and Xiao Maxian stopped quarreling and locked onto him. They either used sky-filling feathers or condensed violent flames to attack him. The half-step sage who had been repeatedly attacked had his strength greatly reduced. He was immediately suppressed by the two contract beasts. The more he fought, the more flustered he became. This was because the disciples of the sect of all times had once again locked onto him with their strange treasure. If he dodged, he would be bombarded. If he didn't dodge, he would have to face the endless entanglement of the man and woman. Boom! After a while, Xiao Ziji seized the opportunity and fired another shot. Then, with incomparable precision, it exploded on the half-step sage's body, causing his hair to emit white smoke. He was strong and could withstand the bombardment of a rocket, but once or twice was fine. How could he continue to do so? So, unfortunately, he dragged his distressed body down. Shwa! Little Long Long rushed over with a trail of flames trailing behind him, and he abruptly extended both of his hands. A series of cannonballs flew toward the falling target like cruise missiles. Xiao Maxian naturally wasn't willing to fall behind. She once again condensed sky-filling feathers and shot them towards the half-step sage. Boom! 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 The area outside the valley suddenly caved in under the crazy bombardment. Finally, a several hundred feet deep pit appeared. As for the half-step sage of the world-defying sacred sect, he lay miserably in the deepest part of the valley, completely unconscious. After being bombarded by the rocket 3 times and being bombarded by the 2 contract beasts for so long, he had to get up and take off his hat to pay his respects. Boom! Boom! On the other side, Evil Saint 5 Ultimates displayed his evil techniques to the extreme. While the opponent was fighting with the Extreme Coldness Palace's Supreme Elder, he sneaked in from behind. After dozens of attacks, the half-step sage's mind collapsed. In the end, he could only drag his back covered in black palm prints and flee out of the valley. When he saw the half-step sage of the world-defying sacred sect being knocked unconscious in the deep pit, he knew that the situation was over. So, he transmitted a sound transmission, retreat. His companion didn't have the time to reply because they had already flown several hundred kilometers away. Jun Changshao was madly chasing after them with his saber in hand. It was as if they were entangled in a battle of, "You are the wind and I am the sand." Damn it! After waiting for his companion's sound transmission for a long time, the half-step Wusheng gritted his teeth and flew away without looking back. When the Supreme Elder of the Extreme Coldness Palace and Evil Saint Five Ultimates saw the other party slip away, they didn't chase after him. Instead, they landed on the boulder. The corners of the mouth of the martial artist standing in the distance twitched. Of the three half-step Wusheng, one was knocked unconscious, one was chased all over the world, and the last one directly slipped away. It was simply unbelievable. No wonder Jun Patriarch dared to occupy the valley and was not afraid of so many sections. It turned out that he was not courting death, but he really had the strength to fight with them. Shua! At this moment, Jun Changshao flew over with his wings and then gasped, "Damn it, he ran so fast." The corners of Li Qingyang and the others' mouths twitched slightly. The two contract beasts and senior five ultimates could suppress the half-step sage because of their numbers. The Patriarch was really super valiant to fight a half-step sage alone with a blade. "Patriarch," Li Qingyang said, "what about the half-step sage who fainted?" Jun Changshao withdrew his blade and took off his armor, seal his meridians and tie him up. "Yes." Li Fei and Tian Qi quickly ran over. Plop! Jun Changshao sat down and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Damn it, I'm so tired." Although this guy felt good killing the half-step sage and running all over the world, it also consumed a lot of spiritual energy and strength. If the other party didn't slip away and persisted for a while, he would be completely exhausted. The system said, there is still a big gap between the host and the half-step Wusheng. Without the support of his equipment, with Jun Changshao's 7th grade sword Wuhuang level cultivation, he could only compete with the peak Wuhuang. He would be completely defeated in the face of a half-step sage. Of course. It was still worth it to be able to kill a half-step sage with a cheat. This was because not everyone had the right to use cheats, and not everyone could do well in the other world without being banned after using cheats. Everything returned to normal. Peppa the wild boar in the mine was not disturbed and continued to dig the spirit stone vein. Hao Guang Holy Sect and world-defying Holy Sect, who had suffered a loss, did not send anyone else. In just one night, the natural spirit stones were all dug up. Jun Patriarch counted them, there were at least 2 to 3 million, and said happily, "Let's go back." "Yes sir." Xiao Ziji kept the field cannon and rocket launcher, Zhen Dexiu removed the array and kept the array flag, and the disciples of the sect of all times rode on the Hurricane Wolf and sped back to the sect. Soon, the valley became cold and cheerless. When the warriors in the distance saw the sect of all times' troops retreat, they entered the mine with a fluke mentality. When they saw that there was nothing inside, the corner of their mouths twitched. The newly unearthed spirit stone vein was dug clean in less than a day. How did they do it? On the way back, the Purple King looked at Jun Changshao and the others who were walking in front of him, and said with a solemn expression, "This fifth-rate sect of all times is not simple." The 3 half-step Wusheng had suffered losses in their hands. He had been sealed for so long, his cultivation and strength had been greatly reduced, and he had been captured as a captive. It was not embarrassing at all. Thinking of this, the Purple King straightened his back and swaggered away. Yi Xingqian, who had followed along, did not say a word, but he was a little unhappy. Because from guarding the spirit stone vein to fighting with the half-step sage, he was just here to be a bystander. No hurry, no hurry. When this emperor regains his peak strength, he will be part of any big scene. Chapter 757. An ore vein containing millions of natural spirit stones was dug clean by Peppa Wild Boar in a short period of time. Its efficiency could be said to be quite fast. On the way back, June Patriarch couldn't help but think to himself, if I can buy the skill to explore underground ores in the shop, then use the Spirit Beast Hall to train this little guy, that would be perfect. Peppa Wild Boar's Earth attribute was simply a natural treasure hunter and a miner. The system said, yes. I know. June Changshao said, of course I have to buy it, right? The system said, or I'll give it to you for free. June Changshao shrugged and said, I don't mind if you give it to me for free. Dream on. The system said. June Changshao ignored it and opened the purchased item list, locking onto the treasure incubator that was rewarded by the mission. The introduction said that this was an item used to incubate treasures of heaven and earth. Its advantage was that it could accelerate the ripening process, but its disadvantage was that it could only incubate treasures of heaven and earth. The herbs planted in the herb garden, regardless of whether they were ordinary or high-grade, could not be described as treasures of heaven and earth, so it had no effect on them. June Changshao couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. If the seeds of the herbs could be incubated, he could buy a few more for the medicine hall to accelerate the ripening process of Martial Emperor pills and other pills, 10,000 contribution points. June Changshao continued to read, and his eyes widened when he saw the final price. If it was an item that could increase one's combat strength, he could accept the higher price. However, if it was an item that could only incubate treasures of heaven and earth, and yet it was priced at a price that could only be found in high-grade shops, then it was a little fucked up. The system said, treasures of heaven and earth are hard to come by, and their growth cycle is extremely long. With this item, you can accelerate the ripening process. If it were me, let alone 10,000, I would buy it even if it was 100,000. June Changshao rolled his eyes. He already knew that the value of this guy's existence was not only to piss him off, but also to instigate him to spend contribution points. He wondered if it had received any commission from the salted fish author. Besides, the host still has the Tranquil Heart Lotus. This item completely meets the standard of treasures of heaven and earth. It can be planted inside to accelerate the ripening process, allowing the missing 2 petals to grow out quickly. The system said. That's right. June Changshao's eyes lit up. This was a heavenly treasure that he had found in the 100-faced medical sage's tomb. If the system hadn't reminded him, he would have almost forgotten about it. Moreover, the evil sage of 5 ultimates had said that only by eating all 9 petals of the Tranquil Heart Saint Lotus would he be able to completely recover his cultivation. This time, for the sake of the Spirit Stone Mine, he had gone head-on against a first-rate and second-rate faction, and it could be said that he had formed a grudge with them. In the future, they might come looking for trouble. If this servant could recover Wu Xing's cultivation, he would undoubtedly be more confident. Bye. Ding. The host has spent 10,000 contribution points and obtained a Heavenly Treasure Incubator X1. It has been transferred into the space ring. Ding. Sect contribution points, 200,015,0000. The Heavenly Treasure Incubator was similar to an incubator, but it was smaller in size. It was obviously impossible to plant a large number of heavenly treasures. There was a notch at the bottom. According to the manual, it was used for charging. This item had the same function as an incubator. Heavenly treasures could be planted inside, and all kinds of energy could be used to accelerate the incubation process. Medicinal herbs, ores, crystal cores, and even spirit stones could all be used. Of course. In terms of effect, the best energy was undoubtedly the crystal cores and spirit stones, and the worst was the medicinal herbs and ores. Moreover, the quality of the energy also determined the incubation speed. After June Changshao flipped through the manual, he was speechless. Another product that requires a lot of money. Of course. You want to let a heavenly treasure grow 10 times? You want to let a heavenly treasure grow 100 times? You want to let a heavenly treasure grow 1,000 times? Come on, young man, let's recharge happily. Can it be done without spending money? Yes, this product is based on people. As long as you buy it, you can permanently enjoy 1.5 times the growth speed. 1.5 times is not bad, at least it is accelerated. But for a heavenly treasure that can grow for hundreds or thousands of years, it is simply useless. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, I'd better buy money. After returning to the faction, he first settled down a few million spirit stones, then went to the herb garden to transplant the tranquil Saint Lotus into the incubator. Whoosh! In a moment, a faint aura filled the air and then wrapped the tranquil Saint Lotus. Ding! Suddenly, a projection appeared at the bottom of the incubator. The number displayed on it was Heavenly Treasure is in the process of ripening. The original time is 1,000 years. With 1.5 times acceleration, it will be 666. 666 years. Jun Changxiao's mouth twitched. It even listed the original time and acceleration time. Isn't this forcing me to recharge and accelerate? What's the difference between this and a level 999 mobile game where you can get godly equipment from a single kill? It's only 666 years. The system sang in a female voice. Come on, let's have fun. Anyway, there's plenty of time. Get lost. Jun Changshao said. Not to mention 666 years, he couldn't even wait 6 years. So, in order to let the herb mature faster, he had to greatly increase the speed. If 100 times wasn't enough, he had to at least increase it by 1,000 times. Huff. Jun Changshao took a deep breath, but he was having a mental breakdown. Isn't it just 2 petals? It took 1,000 years to grow. If I knew it wouldn't have any effect on Shi Jingxian and Elder Wei, I wouldn't have plucked it. So, the Heavenly Treasure Incubator is your medicine for regret, to make up for your past mistakes, the system said. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head, then took out a crystal core and inserted it into the notch. Ding! A soft sound came from the monitor. He only saw that the time, which was accurate to the second, was shortened by 60 seconds as the crystal core's energy entered. Fuck! Jun Changshao almost jumped up. He held his head and said frantically, 1 crystal core is 1 minute faster. The system said, the crystal core's level is too low. If you use this kind of crystal core, 525,600 minutes a year, in 666 years, you'll need. Well, not much, only 300 million or so. Jun Changshao rolled his eyes and said, let's not talk about whether there are dire beasts in the Starfall continent that carry 300 million crystal cores. Even if we kill them, how long will it take to gather that amount? So, if the host doesn't want to waste time, just throw in a crystal core of a higher level, the system said. That's the only way. Jun Changshao took out another crystal core that was comparable to a martial master, and the time was shortened by 2 minutes. Not bad. The system said, this will only require about 170 million crystal cores of the same level. Fuck. Jun Changshao integrated a high-grade crystal core that was comparable to a wuzong, and the time was increased to 4 minutes. Reduce it by half again. Jun Changshao pulled his hair. In the end, he made up his mind and threw in a crystal core that was comparable to a martial king, and the time was increased from 4 minutes to 60 minutes. The system said, if the host uses a crystal core of this level, you'll only need about 5 million. Jun Changshao collapsed on the chair. The Starfall continent might have hundreds of millions of martial disciple-level crystal cores, but it was impossible to have more than 5 million martial king-level crystal cores. I can't afford it. A martial king-level crystal core only increased the speed by 1 hour, which made Jun Changshao feel despair. The system said, the host can try with spirit stones. Jun Changshao was silent. The highest level crystal core he had was Martial King level, so if he wanted to test the speed, he could only start with spirit stones. As for medicinal herbs and ores, he didn't even think about it. After all, he couldn't even carry a crystal core. If he used these, he estimated that he would need at least tens of billions of stalks or tons. Let's give it a try. Jun Changshao took out a man-made spirit stone. After merging with it, the time was also reduced to 60 minutes, which was equivalent to the speed increase of a Martial King level crystal core. In this way, he could calculate the cost. One man-made spirit stone was 10,000 taels. If he threw in 8 million spirit stones, he could directly mature the Tranquil Heart Saint Lotus. The money needed was Jun Changshao squatted on the ground, covering his face. It was unknown whether he was crying or laughing. 58 billion, ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, don't cry. The system said, try using natural spirit stones. Yes. Jun Changshao stood up and said, I still have natural spirit stones. As he spoke, he took out the warm natural spirit stones that Peppa Wild Boar had just dug out and merged them into the groove. Ding! The notification sounded again. The time on the monitor was reduced by 10 hours. 10 hours. Jun Changshao raised his head, his eyes rolling, and said, hurry up and calculate for me, how much do I need? The system said, more than 580,000 natural spirit stones. This number wasn't small, but Jun Changshao had just dug out a few million spirit stones, so he could afford to use them to mature the lotus. So he spread his hands and waved them, singing in a female voice, come on, let's have some fun, there's plenty of time anyway. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.